Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I remember that Halloween like it just happened yesterday. Back then I was 12 years old, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Everett, Washington. Halloween was always the biggest night of the year for me and my best friend Tyler. Every year we'd run house to house, our pillowcases heavy with candy, until our legs gave out and our sugar high carried us home. Then we'd dump our loot on the floor, trade pieces, and marathon horror movies until we passed out. That Halloween felt no different, at least at first. Tyler came over around 6 wearing a cheap zombie mask that looked like it came straight from the dollar store. I had on this ridiculous ghost face costume that barely fit me anymore, but I didn't care. We were kids. We didn't need fancy costumes, we just needed candy. "Bro, we're hitting Maple Drive first," Tyler said, tightening his mask. "Old lady on the corner always gives out full-size bars." "Yeah, but we're skipping that duplex with the porch lights off," I said, already remembering the year before when some teenager jumped out of the bushes screaming. Tyler laughed. "You still scared of that, man?" "That was 3 years ago. We trick-or-treated for a good 2 hours. The streets were alive, parents chatting, little kids running around in plastic masks, pumpkins glowing on every porch. The crisp autumn air smelled like wet leaves and cheap candy wrappers. By the time we got back to my place, it was just past 9. My mom was already in her pajamas, brushing her teeth. She had to open the cafe early the next morning. "All right, boys," she said, smiling. "Don't stay up too late and don't open the door for anyone, okay? It's too late for trick-or-treaters now." Yeah, we know," I said, rolling my eyes. Tyler smirked. "We're angels, Mrs. Lawson." "Uh-huh," she said with a smirk of her own. "That's what worries me." After she went to bed, we threw all our candy on the living room floor, turned on Night of the Living Dead, and got to work demolishing our haul. The house was warm and cozy, but the wind outside was picking up. You could hear it rattling the windows every now and then. We were maybe 30 minutes into the movie when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make both of us freeze. Tyler looked over at me. "You expecting someone?" "No," I said, lowering the volume. "It's probably just a late trick-or-treater." "Bro, it's almost 10. I shrugged. "Maybe someone's still out." I started toward the door, but something felt off. The knocks didn't sound playful. There was no trick-or-treat following them, no laughter, no rustling of candy bags. Just silence. Instead of opening the door, I decided to peek through the blinds beside it. And that's when I saw him. A tall man stood on the porch, not moving, not even holding a candy bag. He was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, and sunglasses. At night. His face looked hollow under the porch light, the faint outline of stubble covering his jaw. He wasn't in costume. Tyler whispered from behind me. "Who is it?" "Some dude," I whispered back. "Doesn't look right. Maybe he's lost? Then why is he knocking on random houses on Halloween night?" We watched as the man slowly turned his head, scanning the yard like he was looking for something, or someone. My heart started to pound. Then, finally, he walked down the steps and disappeared down the sidewalk. "Dude, that was weird," Tyler said. "Yeah. I'm locking this." I slid the deadbolt into place, double-checked the handle, and tried to shake off the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. We went back to the couch. Tyler tried to joke about it, but neither of us was laughing much. 10 minutes later, knock, 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 this time louder, harder. We froze again. I muted the TV. "Bro, he's back," Tyler whispered. I could feel my stomach tighten. No way. We both crept toward the window again as quietly as we could. The moment I pulled the blind back, I nearly jumped out of my skin. The man was standing right there, staring straight at us. His expression had changed. His mouth pressed into a grim line, his brows furrowed. He looked angry. I dropped the blinds instantly. He saw me. "Dude, what the hell does he want?" Tyler hissed. "I don't know. Just don't move." But the knocking didn't stop. It got faster, louder. Then it moved, to the window on the other side of the living room. Tap, tap, tap. He was walking along the side of the house, tapping on each window. "Stop messing with us," Tyler yelled, his voice cracking. That only seemed to make it worse. The tapping turned into banging. We heard him move toward the kitchen, then the dining room. I whispered, "He's going around the back." Tyler's face went pale. "We should wake your mom." Before I could answer, a sudden shattering sound echoed through the house, the unmistakable crack of glass breaking. "Oh my God," I breathed. "He's in." We bolted up the stairs like our lives depended on it. My heart was slamming in my chest so hard it hurt. I nearly tripped on the last step. "Mom! Mom, wake up!" I yelled, pushing open her door. She shot up instantly, eyes wide. "What? What's wrong?" "Someone broke in," Tyler blurted out. "He's downstairs." She didn't even hesitate, grabbed her phone and locked the bedroom door. She whispered into the phone, "Yes, this is 1128 Oak Ridge Lane. Someone just broke into my house. Please hurry." Tyler and I dove under the bed, shaking uncontrollably. I could hear my mom whispering with the dispatcher, her voice trembling. Every creak of the floorboards downstairs made my stomach twist tighter. Then, creak. Footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from the living room. He was inside. We heard him walking around, opening doors, stepping on the glass he'd broken. Then silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. We didn't move, not even to breathe. Then, faintly, from the bottom of the stairs, creak. Tyler's hand grabbed mine under the bed. I could feel him shaking, but the footsteps stopped. A minute passed, then another. Outside, the distant sound of sirens began to echo through the neighborhood, getting closer. Mom whispered, "He's leaving." We heard the back door slam, then nothing. The police arrived a few minutes later. 2 officers went through the house while another stayed with us upstairs. They found the basement window shattered, muddy footprints across the laundry room floor, and, this part still chills me, they found fingerprints on nearly every downstairs window. Whoever that man was, he'd been circling the house, trying each one. They never caught him. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without the hallway light on. Every knock, every creak, every gust of wind scraping against the siding made me jump. Tyler and I didn't even watch horror movies that year. We didn't need to. We'd already lived through one. I never thought Halloween could turn into one of the scariest nights of my life. I mean, yeah, you hear about bad stuff happening on Halloween. Drunk fights, stupid dares, people getting too wild. But you never really think it's going to happen to you. It was my freshman year of college, the first one I was spending away from home. I went to a pretty big university in Colorado, and by October, I had a small group of friends I hung out with, mostly other freshmen from the dorms. College life was still new to me back then. Late-night runs, cheap beer, the excitement of freedom. That year, Halloween landed on a Saturday, so everyone was going crazy about the weekend parties. I wasn't much of a drinker, but I didn't want to be the guy staying in his dorm watching horror movies alone. I dressed up as a nerd, suspenders, taped glasses, the whole cliché, and met up with my friends at a bar near campus. By 10:30, the line was long and the music was so loud you could feel the bass from the sidewalk. I remember yelling over the noise to my friend Tyler, "You think they'll even let me in with this fake ID?" He laughed. "Bro, they don't care tonight. Everyone's dressed like idiots anyway." But they did care. The bouncer looked at my ID for maybe half a second before shaking his head. "No shot, man. Try again when you're 21, so I told the others to go ahead." "It's fine, I'll figure something out," I said, pulling out my phone. I stood on the sidewalk as the autumn wind blew down Main Street. The streetlights flickered, orange and hazy. My phone buzzed with a message from a friend named Luke. We'd met a few weeks earlier at the rec center. "Luke." "Yo, There's this house party on Waverly Street. You trying to go? Me. Who's throwing it? Luke. IDK man, a friend of a friend. Supposed to be big. I hesitated. Waverly Street was a few blocks off campus, not far but quiet, mostly student rentals and old houses. Still, it was Halloween, and the night was young. Greater than me bet. I'll meet you there. I started walking, the sound of laughter and music fading behind me as I turned down a darker side street. Fallen leaves crunched under my sneakers. Most houses had carved pumpkins on their porches, flickering candles glowing inside them. When I reached Waverly Street, I spotted a dimly lit house at the far end. The porch light was on, and a guy in a football jersey was sitting on the steps drinking from a red cup. Music played faintly from inside. Luke waved at me as I approached. Yo, this is the spot. The guy on the porch gave a lazy grin. You guys here for the party? Yeah, Luke said. I'm Luke. This is Matt. Cool, the guy replied. I'm Reed. Shoes off inside, all right? Don't trash the place. I remember stepping into a small entryway piled with shoes. Like way too many for how quiet it was inside. I could barely hear the music anymore once we were in. It smelled faintly of mold and old carpet. Damn, I muttered. Where is everyone? Luke shrugged. Maybe out back? We walked through a short hallway and into a room where a speaker sat on the floor blaring music, but no one was there. No laughter, no talking, no clinking bottles. Something about it felt off. Then came the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate ones. Luke turned his head toward the entryway. Yo, Reed, he called. Two men appeared. Both wore ski masks. Both carried baseball bats. My heart dropped into my stomach. The taller one, probably 6'4", easily, pointed the bat at us. Phones. Pockets. Move to the kitchen. Luke froze. Wait, what the hell? Move, the other one barked. We walked toward the back, my pulse hammering in my ears. My stomach felt like it was folding in on itself. Every step I took, I felt the floor creak beneath me, the sound echoing in that old, empty house. The kitchen light flickered overhead. There was a small wooden table, a single chair, and a door slightly ajar leading to what looked like a basement. Go down, the tall one said. Luke's breathing was shaky. Man, look, we don't have anything, okay? The man slammed the bat against the fridge. Bang. I said go down. That sound, the bat hitting the metal, snapped something inside me. Panic hit like ice water. Luke shot me a look. Just a split-second glance, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. He bolted. Luke, no! I shouted, but it was too late. He dashed toward the back door, fumbling with the lock. I just ran after him. The back door flew open, and the cold air hit me as one of the men yelled behind us. Grab them. I heard the pounding of boots on the floor. Something hit my leg. A sharp, blinding pain tore through my calf. I stumbled, but didn't stop. The adrenaline overpowered everything. We sprinted through the yard, knocking over garbage bins, leaves flying around us. My breath came in ragged gasps. Luke shouted, "Keep going, dude." I could hear the men shouting, but their voices grew fainter. We tore through an alley and finally reached the edge of campus, collapsing near a dorm parking lot. I dropped to the pavement, clutching my leg. It was throbbing and warm. When I looked, there was a dark bruise already forming. Holy shit, I breathed out, still shaking. What the hell was that? Luke sat beside me, gasping for air. They were trying to rob us, man. Or worse. We called the police right there. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold my phone. The dispatcher told us to stay put. A patrol car showed up maybe 15 minutes later. The officers listened, took our statements, and then drove to the address we gave them. When they came back, one of them said, "House is empty. Nobody there. Looks like it's been vacant for a while." Luke frowned. "What about the guy outside?" "Reed." The cop looked at him blankly. "There's no one by that name on the lease. Owner lives out of state." The realization hit me like a second wave of cold. We had walked into a setup, a trap in an abandoned house. That night, after the cops dropped us back at campus, I sat in my dorm bathroom, staring at my bruised leg, feeling the dull ache set in. I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking about that basement door. What might have been waiting for us if Luke hadn't run. To this day, I can still hear that sound in my head. The metallic clang of the bat hitting the fridge, the heavy footsteps closing in. I never went to another off-campus party again. Sometimes, around Halloween, I walk past Waverly Street on my way to class. The house still stands there, boarded up, forgotten. But every once in a while, someone swears they hear music coming from inside. I still remember Halloween night, 2005. Not because it was fun or wild like you'd expect, but because it changed the way I looked at Halloween forever. That year, I was 15, a sophomore, living in a small Ohio town called Maple Hollow, the kind of place where nothing ever happened unless you counted Friday night football and rumors spreading faster than wildfire. Halloween used to be our favorite night of the year. But as we got older, it felt like we were stuck in this weird in-between. Too old for trick-or-treating, too young to hit bars or college parties. We wanted something different that year, something that felt grown-up but still had that Halloween thrill to it. My best friends, Tyler, Ben, and Casey, were the kind of guys I'd been hanging with since middle school. We were inseparable. Tyler was the mouthy one, always talking his way out of trouble. Ben was chill, usually the one to keep the peace. Casey was a little unpredictable but fun as hell when he wasn't being a jerk. That Halloween fell on a Monday. We didn't have school off, but that didn't stop us from planning something dumb. I got home that afternoon, did my homework just enough to keep Mom off my back, then hopped on MSN Messenger to see what the plan was. Everyone was just as bored as me, until Tyler messaged. Tyler, yo, I talked to Chris. His cousin's got something going down by the river tonight. You in? Me. What's the something? Tyler. Abandoned school. Beer. Fire. Older crowd. I remember grinning at my monitor like an idiot. Beer. A campfire. An abandoned building. It sounded like every dumb teenage fantasy rolled into one. Chris's cousin, Derek, was a couple of years older than us. The dude had tattoos, a beat-up truck, and always managed to get his hands on alcohol. He was the cool, reckless type we all looked up to. So yeah, we were in. But right as I was about to leave, Mom popped her head into my room. Before you go, she said, you're taking Eli trick-or-treating. I don't want him going alone. I groaned. Mom, I already told the guys. No arguments, she said, pointing her finger like she always did when she meant business. An hour. That's it. I didn't have a choice. So I grabbed my little brother, walked him around the neighborhood for an hour, and dropped him back home as fast as possible. By the time I finally left, it was already past 8. The spot was an old kindergarten near the riverbank. Riverside Preschool, according to the faded sign still hanging out front. The town shut it down years ago after a flood, and it had been fenced off ever since. By the time I got there, the others were already drinking around a small fire pit. I could smell the cheap Bud Light and burning wood before I even saw them. Music was playing low from someone's phone speaker, and the whole place had that eerie, empty vibe. Broken windows, graffiti, rusted swing sets swaying in the wind. Finally! Tyler yelled when he spotted me. Late as hell, dude! Yeah, my mom had me walking Eli around, I said. What did I miss? Nothing, Chris said, grinning. Except we're out of beer. Already? I asked. No, we stashed the rest, Derek chimed in, his voice rough from smoking. Didn't want to risk the cops finding all of it if they roll up. We put it behind the back fence in that old house next door. Yeah, Tyler added with a smirk. And since you were late? Wait, you want me to go get it? I asked. Exactly, Derek said. Don't worry. It's right inside. We'll keep the fire going. I sighed but grabbed a flashlight anyway. Fine. But you owe me 2 beers, deal, Tyler said, laughing. I made my way to the fence. It was a flimsy plastic one, torn open just enough to squeeze through. Beyond it was another yard, overgrown and silent. The house was smaller than the preschool, its paint peeled, windows busted. I could smell mildew and wet dirt. I remember thinking the place looked wrong, like it had been forgotten for too long. Still, I aimed my flashlight ahead and trudged through the tall weeds toward the back door, which hung slightly open. "Yo!" I called out, half expecting one of the guys to yell back. "You said it's in here, right?" Nothing. Just the sound of the wind whistling through the trees. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Damp, moldy, and something else underneath like rot. My shoes squished on the warped floorboards. Then I heard movement. Slow, uneven steps coming from the hallway ahead. "Tyler?" I whispered. A figure limped into view holding his side. My flashlight caught his face, and it was Chris. His eyes were wide, his skin pale. "Dude," he gasped. "Help me." What the hell happened? I started forward, but before I could reach him, he was yanked backward into the darkness. Hard, he screamed. "Chris!" I shouted, my voice cracking. The sound echoed through the empty house. I froze for half a second, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. Then instinct kicked in. I bolted. I tore through the yard, tripping over a half-buried tire, scraping my arm on the fence as I squeezed through. By the time I made it back to the campfire, I was panting like I'd run a marathon. "Guys," I shouted. "Something's wrong. Chris, someone grabbed him." Tyler looked up, laughing. "Oh, come on, dude. You're not serious." "I'm dead serious," I yelled. "He was in there. Someone pulled him back." For a few seconds, they just stared. Then Derek started laughing too. "Jesus, man. You really fell for it, huh?" "What are you talking about?" "We told Chris to mess with you," Tyler said between laughs. "He went to hide in there when you texted that you were on your way." My stomach dropped. No, that wasn't a prank. Someone grabbed him. The laughter faded fast. Derek's smirk disappeared. "What?" "I'm telling you, man." He wasn't acting. He looked terrified. Derek exchanged a look with one of his friends, then said, "Let's go." Now we all rushed toward the fence, this time climbing through together. The firelight faded behind us as we crossed into the other yard. The place felt colder now, quieter. "Chris!" Derek yelled as we stepped inside the house. Flashlight beams bounced off the walls, revealing graffiti, old furniture, broken glass. Then we heard it. A soft groan coming from deeper inside. "Over here!" Ben shouted. We followed his light to a small room near the back. Chris was lying on the floor, blood smeared on his face. His shirt was ripped, one of his shoes missing. "Holy shit," Tyler whispered. Chris tried to speak but coughed instead, blood running from his mouth. "He's still in here." "Who?" Derek asked, kneeling beside him. Chris just shook his head weakly. "Upstairs." That was enough for Derek. He handed me his flashlight. "Stay with him," he said, pulling out a pocket knife, the useless kind that folds. He and two others crept toward the stairs. I stayed beside Chris, pressing my hoodie against his face to stop the bleeding. "Hang on, man. Just hang on." Then came the sound, heavy footsteps upstairs, then something falling. Derek and the others came running back down. "There's no one up there," Derek said, but his face said otherwise. We got Chris out of the house, back toward the fire, where one of Derek's friends called 911. The cops showed up fast, followed by an ambulance. They didn't even care about the beer. They just wanted to know what happened. Chris was in the hospital for weeks, broken ribs, busted eye socket, and internal bleeding. It was bad. Later, we found out the truth. The house wasn't empty. It was being used as a stash spot by some drug runner who thought we were there to rob him. He must have been hiding upstairs when Chris went in to set up the prank. When he saw him, he attacked, probably thinking he was protecting his stash. The guy was long gone by the time cops searched the place, but they did find evidence. Needles, baggies, even a small mattress upstairs. Someone had been living there for months. Every Halloween since then, I can't look at an abandoned building the same way. The smell of smoke and beer by the river still takes me back to that night, to Chris's scream, to the look in his eyes when he said, "Help me." It was the first time in my life I understood what real fear felt like, and the last time I ever wanted to feel it again. I still can't shake the memories of that Halloween night. It's been 2 years now, but I still double-check the locks, peek out the window before bed, and sleep light, just in case. I'm 33 now, a husband and father. My boy, Colby, is 8. Back then, when this happened, he had just turned 6. A bright, imaginative kid who loved superheroes, especially Spider-Man. He wore that red and blue costume for weeks before Halloween, running around the living room shooting imaginary webs at me and my wife, Kelly. We lived in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Springfield, Ohio, one of those middle-class areas where folks decorate big for the holidays and every driveway smells like pumpkins and cider in October. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. Or at least I thought it was. That Halloween started off perfectly normal. The streets were alive. Leaves crunching under sneakers, porch lights glowing orange, and little voices shouting trick or treat from every direction. Kelly and I walked alongside Colby as he darted from house to house, his candy bucket swinging wildly. After about 2 hours, his pace slowed. His little legs were tired and his mask had slipped sideways. "Buddy, you about ready to head home?" I asked. He nodded, a bit pouty. "Can I just do one more house?" "All right," I said, laughing. "One more, then we head back." We got home around 8. The air had that crisp, cold bite that hinted winter wasn't far away. Kelly had left a bowl of candy on the porch with a little handwritten sign that said, "Take one." Of course, when we got back, the bowl was empty. Kelly smirked. "Yeah, figures. Some kid dumped the whole thing in his bag. Probably the vampire down the street," I said. He looked guilty. Inside, the house felt warm and cozy. Fake spider webs across the mantel, orange lights glowing in the kitchen window. Colby plopped down on the rug and started sorting his candy, naming each piece like it was gold. Kelly poured herself a glass of wine, and I sat down beside him, untying my shoes. It felt like a good night. Simple, calm, perfect. And then the doorbell rang. It startled me because it hadn't even been a full minute since we got home. Kelly looked up from her phone. "Who's still out this late?" she said. "Probably a few stragglers," I replied, heading to the door. When I opened it, I saw a man and a little boy standing on the porch. The porch light flickered for a second, and I could make out their faces clearly. The man looked to be in his late 30s, tall and thin, wearing a faded plaid jacket. The boy beside him was about Colby's age, dressed in a cheap-looking Spider-Man costume with a slightly torn mask. "Hey there," the man said, smiling politely. "Sorry to bother you, but my kid really needs to use the bathroom. We've been walking for a while, and it's about a half hour back to our place." I froze for a second. I didn't like the idea. Halloween or not, letting strangers inside didn't sit right. Kelly had stood up in the living room now, giving me that "don't you dare" look from across the room. The boy was hopping from foot to foot, holding his stomach, clearly uncomfortable. "Please, sir," the man said again. "We'll be quick." I hesitated, then sighed. "Yeah, all right. Down the hall. First door on your left." The boy darted past me, heading straight down the hallway. The man smiled awkwardly. "Thank you, really." He's been holding it in since Main Street. "No problem," I said, forcing a grin. "Halloween rush, huh?" "Yeah," he chuckled weakly. "It's been a long night." He didn't make small talk after that. He just stood near the entryway, his eyes scanning the living room. I noticed he kept glancing at Colby. It wasn't long, but it was long enough for my stomach to twist. After maybe a minute, the boy came running back, his mask still half on. "All right, let's go," the man said, smiling again. "Thank you so much." "No problem," I said, handing the kid a few pieces of candy from our extra stash. "Happy Halloween." The man nodded and gave a quick wave before they disappeared down the sidewalk. I watched until they turned the corner. Kelly exhaled. "I don't like that, Drew." "I know," I said. "But it's fine. They're gone." We went about the rest of the night like normal, cleaned up the porch, turned off the lights, tucked Colby in. By midnight, the neighborhood was quiet. I must have dozed off around 1 in the morning. But sometime later, I heard it. A scream. Colby's voice. "Dad!" I shot out of bed, heart hammering. Kelly gasped beside me, fumbling for her phone. "Colby!" I yelled, running toward his room. He was standing in the hallway, crying, pointing toward his window. "There's a man! There's a man! He came in my window!" I sprinted past him into his room, and the sight froze me. The window was wide open, curtains fluttering from the cold wind, and a figure, the same man from earlier, was climbing out. "Hey!" I yelled, lunging forward. He dropped to the grass outside and bolted across the yard. I chased after him barefoot, the gravel cutting into my feet. I caught sight of his plaid jacket vanishing into the woods behind our fence, but he was too fast. I stopped at the edge, chest heaving, heart pounding like a drum. Kelly came running out, clutching Colby, both of them terrified. "What happened?" she screamed. "It's him," I said, breathless. "The guy from earlier." He came through the damn window. We called the police immediately. 2 cruisers showed up within minutes, lights flashing across the house. They took our statements, dusted the window for prints, and searched the woods. But the man was long gone. That night, none of us slept. Colby stayed between us in our bed, trembling every time he heard a noise. The next few days were tense. We didn't let Colby out of our sight. I added locks, cameras, motion lights, the works. 3 days later, a detective called. "Mr. Brooks," he said, "we caught the man." I nearly dropped the phone. He went on to explain that the man wasn't from our neighborhood at all. He lived 2 towns over, a drifter of sorts, moving between short-term rentals and motels. And the boy who'd come with him that night? He wasn't his son. The detective told me the boy had been abducted a year before, snatched from a small town during a summer festival. The man had been using him as cover, posing as his father while moving place to place. My blood ran cold. They'd found the boy safe after arresting the man, and he was reunited with his family. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. If I hadn't let that man in, if I'd trusted my gut, maybe none of that would have happened. And worse, what if he hadn't come back for the boy? What if he came back for Colby? Now every Halloween, I keep the lights off. No decorations, no candy bowl on the porch. Kelly says I'm overreacting, but I can't shake it, because I still remember that man's smile as he thanked me, the way his eyes flicked past me, straight toward my son. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind hits the window just right, I swear I still hear that faint tap, 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 like fingers brushing against the glass. I've never been the kind of person who went all out for Halloween. No big decorations, no parties, no loud music shaking the walls. Just me, a bowl of candy, and whatever scary movie marathon was playing on TV. I'm 26 now, and I live alone in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Maple Hollow, a small town in Oregon that most people just drive through on their way to somewhere else. I'd been living there for about a year, renting a small 1-story house at the end of a cul-de-sac. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. And that's all I really wanted. Halloween had always been simple. Kids would come by from around 3 p.m. until about 8. I'd hand out candy, then I'd lock up, grab a beer, and spend the rest of the night with whatever was on TV. I actually liked the quiet after the chaos of trick-or-treaters, the sound of leaves brushing along the sidewalk, the distant laughter fading down the street. But last Halloween wasn't peaceful. It started like every other one. The usual rush of kids in store-bought costumes, parents waiting by the sidewalk with flashlights. I had some decorations up, a few pumpkins, fake cobwebs, a motion sensor ghost by the porch light. Around 7:30, things started to slow down, and by 8, I figured I'd seen the last of them. I remember standing at my front door, bowl in hand, looking down the street. Porch lights were going off one by one. That's the signal. When the lights go out, the night's over. I turned off mine, set the candy bowl on the table near the door, and went to find something good to watch. I had just sat down on the couch when there was a knock at the door. At first, I thought maybe I'd forgotten to turn the porch light back on and some latecomers thought I was still open for candy. But when I opened the door, it wasn't a kid. It was a man. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. Tall, pale, with thinning hair and a blank stare. He wasn't wearing a costume, just a dark jacket and jeans. The kind of guy you'd see buying a pack of cigarettes at a gas station at midnight. Hey, I said, holding up the candy bowl awkwardly. You, looking for someone? The man didn't answer right away. He just stood there, his eyes flicking past me into my house, like he was searching for something. Finally, he spoke, soft, almost toneless. Is Aaron here? Aaron? I repeated, confused. Sorry, man, there's no one here by that name. He didn't blink, didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on the hallway behind me as if he expected someone to come walking out any second. I cleared my throat. You said Aaron? Who's that? Your kid? The man nodded slowly. He was trick-or-treating. I lost him. That should have sounded sad, or panicked or something. But the way he said it, it was flat, like he was reading off a script. Oh, damn, I said awkwardly. That's awful. Maybe try the next street over? Lots of families over there. The man didn't respond. He just muttered. He was wearing a red mask, then turned and started walking away down the sidewalk. Not running, not calling out, just walking. I stood there for a moment, completely thrown off. Something about it didn't sit right with me. The emotionless tone, the way he looked into my house. I shut the door and locked it, staring at the peephole for a good 10 seconds before sighing and grabbing my phone. Yeah, hi, I told the 911 operator. I'm not sure if this is an emergency, but some guy came to my house asking for his kid. Said he lost him trick-or-treating. Just seemed off. Real off. They took down my address and told me an officer would patrol the area, but unless a missing child report came in, there wasn't much they could do. After hanging up, I stood at the window, watching the street. It was dead quiet, the kind of silence that creeps under your skin once you start noticing it. I turned back to the TV, tried to shake it off, and found one of the Scream movies playing. About halfway through, I'd almost convinced myself I'd overreacted. Maybe the guy was just a confused dad. Maybe Aaron was at someone else's house. By the time the credits rolled, it was almost 11. The neighborhood was pitch black except for 1 or 2 porch lights down the road. I got up to clean up for the night, grabbed the empty candy bowl, locked the front door, and went to shut the living room blinds. That's when I saw it. A reflection, or maybe a shape, in the window. Someone standing outside. I froze. My first instinct was to look closer, but the second I did, the figure was gone. Just gone. My heart was hammering. I set the candy bowl down slowly and leaned toward the window, trying to peer through the glare of the porch light. The glass reflected the room behind me, but beyond that, nothing. I turned off the living room light to get a better look outside. Still nothing. That's when I noticed something else. The side gate, the one that led to my backyard, was open. I always kept it shut. I backed away from the window, picked up my phone again, and dialed 911. Before I could even finish explaining, there was a loud crack. Something slammed against the front window, hard enough to make the glass fracture into a spiderweb of lines. I dropped the phone, heart racing. Through the broken glass, I caught a glimpse, just for a split second, of a pale face, half hidden in shadow before it darted away. Hey, get the hell out of here, I yelled, but I was trembling so hard it barely came out right. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a fireplace poker, and ran toward the back door. I flicked on the porch light just in time to see movement near the fence. Someone, tall, wearing dark clothes, running along the side of my house. I locked the door immediately and backed into the hallway, breathing hard. The dispatcher was still on the line, asking if I was safe. "Someone tried to break in," I said, voice shaking. "He's in my yard." The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. When the cops finally arrived, I ran to meet them outside. They searched the yard, the street, the nearby houses, but whoever it was had vanished. The officer shone his flashlight along the broken window, then bent down to pick something up from the ground. It was a rock, smooth, round, the size of a baseball. Wrapped around it was a torn piece of red fabric. The cop held it up to the light. "Looks like it came off a costume," he said. "Maybe a mask?" My stomach dropped. A red mask. The man's voice echoed in my head. He was wearing a red mask. But when they checked around town, there were no reports of any missing children. No one named Aaron. Nothing. Over the next few days, I barely slept. Every noise made me jump. Every creak in the floor felt like footsteps. I even installed cameras around my house, but they never picked up anything unusual. A week later, I got a call from one of the officers who had taken my report. He said something strange. There had been a similar call the previous Halloween, just a few streets over. A man knocking on doors late at night asking for his son. Said his name was Aaron. No missing child that time either. I still live in the same house, but I don't hand out candy anymore. Every October, I turn off my porch light early, shut all the blinds, and try to pretend Halloween doesn't exist. But sometimes when the wind hits just right, I swear I can hear it. That same slow, hollow knock on the front door. And I never, ever answer it. I still remember that evening like it was yesterday. Cool air, burnt orange leaves swirling around my boots, and the faint smell of wood smoke from somewhere down the road. It was mid-October, the start of that sweet spot where the days still felt like fall, but the nights whispered winter. My girlfriend Lena had been begging me for weeks to go pumpkin picking. It was our tradition since our first year together, and she took it seriously, like way too seriously. We carved pumpkins every year and competed over who made the best one. She usually won. We didn't go to just any pumpkin patch, though. There was this small, family-run place just outside Millersburg, Ohio, called Pine Hollow Farm. It wasn't commercialized or crowded like the big farms. It was quiet, kind of tucked away behind a stretch of woods, run by an older couple named Frank and Meryl Henson. The first time we went, they were the sweetest people. Frank had this scratchy voice and always wore a red flannel shirt, and Meryl would hand out free cider to anyone who stopped by. It felt homely, old-fashioned, like stepping into a postcard. That was last year. Last fall was different. We left our apartment around 5:30 that evening, a little later than planned. The sun had already started dipping low by the time we pulled into the dirt lot beside the field. The place looked the same as before, rows of pumpkins sprawling across golden fields, a faded wooden sign with Pine Hollow Farm, Pick Your Own, painted in cheerful orange letters. "Looks like we got the whole place to ourselves," I said, shutting the car door. Lena smiled, brushing her auburn hair behind her ear. "Perfect. No kids screaming, no TikTok people blocking the aisles." We both laughed and started walking toward the patch. The air had that crisp bite that made your breath visible. Somewhere beyond the trees, a crow cawed. The Hensons were sitting at a small wooden booth near the entrance. Meryl looked older than I remembered, her skin a little more sallow, her smile strained but still polite. Frank stood behind her, not saying much, just nodding as we walked up. "Well, if it isn't you two again," Meryl said, her voice shaky but cheerful. "You came a bit late, huh?" "The sun's gonna be gone soon." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Got off work later than planned." Hope you still got some good ones left. Oh, plenty left, she said, but something about her eyes made me uneasy. They were watery and distant, not really focused on me. You two just be careful near the woods. Coyote's been acting strange lately. Frank coughed behind her and added, just stick to the open field. Don't go wandering off where the trees start. Lena gave me a look, amused. Noted, she said, and then tugged my hand. Come on, let's go get the perfect pumpkin before it gets dark. We started from the front rows first, but most of the pumpkins there were soft or half rotten. Lena was kneeling, inspecting one after another, shaking her head like she was at an art gallery. You know, I teased, we could just grab any round one and call it a day. She stood, smirking. You say that every year, and then you end up using mine as your inspiration when we carve. Lies, I said. Pure slander. Uh-huh. She pointed toward the far end of the field, where the pumpkins were bigger and untouched. That side looks better. Let's check over there. As we walked, the chatter from the Hensons faded until it was just the crunch of dry grass under our boots and the occasional rustle from the trees. The sun was nearly gone now, everything washed in that eerie orange glow that lasts maybe 5 minutes before full darkness. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No traffic sounds, no people, not even crickets. Just stillness. Lena knelt beside a perfect pumpkin. Oh my God, look at this one, she said, grinning like a kid. This is it. Finally, I said, bending down beside her. You sure it's not too big? It's perfect. Help me lift it. We both grabbed it by the sides, but just as we were about to hoist it up, I heard something, a soft snap, like a branch breaking, coming from the woods behind us. Lena froze. Did you hear that? Probably a raccoon, I said automatically, glancing over my shoulder. The line where the pumpkin field met the forest was maybe 20 feet away, just a wall of shadowed trees. But then we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate ones. Hello? I called out, expecting maybe Frank or Merrill had followed us out. No answer. Lena whispered, that didn't sound like an animal. Before I could reply, I saw movement between the trees, a figure standing halfway behind a trunk. It was too dark to make out clearly, but I could see the shape of a head and a wide, unnatural grin. Who's there? I said again, louder. Then another shape appeared beside it, shorter, smaller. 2 figures, both standing too still. Lena gripped my arm. Is that them? The Hensons? I started, but then they both leaned out slightly and my stomach dropped. It was the Hensons, or it looked like them. Same clothes, same faces, but something was horribly wrong. Their skin looked waxy, their eyes wide open, unblinking, catching what little light was left. And those smiles. They stretched too far, frozen like masks. Frank? I called out, my voice cracking. They didn't answer. They just stared for several seconds before slowly stepping backward, disappearing into the darkness of the trees. What the hell? Lena muttered. What are they doing? I don't know, I said. Maybe they're messing with us? Why would they do that? She snapped. That's not funny. We stood there listening. The sound of dry leaves crunching faded deeper and deeper into the woods until there was nothing. Let's go, she said quietly. I don't like this. I nodded, grabbing her hand, and we started walking fast toward the car. But as we passed the rows of pumpkins, I glanced back once more, half expecting to see those faces watching us again. Nothing. When we reached the front, the booth was empty. The old wooden chair Merrill had been sitting in was toppled over, the cider thermos spilled on the table. Frank? Merrill? I called again. My voice echoed across the empty lot. No one answered. The only sound was the wind sighing through the cornstalks near the fence. Lena's hand trembled in mine. Let's just go. I don't care about the pumpkins, I didn't argue. We jogged to the car, the gravel crunching under our feet, and I fumbled with the keys before finally getting the door open. As we pulled out of the lot, Lena looked out the window toward the dark edge of the field. "Do you see that?" she whispered. I followed her gaze, and for a split second my headlights caught them. The Hensons, standing at the edge of the road side by side, their heads tilted at the exact same angle, smiling that same awful smile. Then the light passed, and they were gone. That night we didn't talk much. Lena locked every window in our apartment. I tried to laugh it off, telling her maybe it was just a prank, but even I didn't believe that. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I tried to call the farm. No answer. I checked online, but their website was gone. Even the listing for Pine Hollow Farm had disappeared from Google Maps. A few days later, Lena showed me an article from the local paper. My stomach dropped as I read the headline: "Bodies of elderly couple found in woods near Millersburg. Frank and Merrill Henson presumed dead for nearly a week before discovery." The date of their deaths? October 10th. We'd gone pumpkin picking on October 13th. I haven't been back to Millersburg since. Every fall when I see a pumpkin stand on the side of the road, I feel that same chill in my chest. Sometimes late at night, I'll wake up to the sound of footsteps on the gravel outside my apartment. And when I look through the blinds for just a second, I swear I see two figures standing at the edge of the street, smiling. I never really cared much for Halloween after high school. The whole thing just lost its charm somewhere along the way. Too many forced costumes, too many awkward parties, too much pretending to have fun. By the time I hit my senior year of college, October 31st was just another night to me. That year, I was living in a small 2-bedroom rental on Birchwood Lane, right off a quiet stretch in Maple Hollow, Ohio. My best friend and roommate, Lena, was the opposite of me when it came to Halloween. She loved it. Pumpkin carving, horror movies, fake spider webs, the whole thing. She even had a little tote labeled October stuff she kept in our hall closet. We didn't have big plans that night, just baking some cookies and watching a horror movie like something simple from our childhoods. Nothing wild. It was cold out, that kind of damp Ohio cold that seeps into your sleeves and collar even if you're bundled up. "Hey, we're out of frosting," Lena said as she was laying out the cookie dough on parchment paper. "You want to make a quick run to the store?" I groaned, pulling my hoodie tighter. "Now?" "It's freezing." She gave me that look, the one that meant you know you're gonna do it anyway. "Fine," I sighed. "But you owe me a coffee run tomorrow." "Deal," she said with a grin. It was about 8:15 when I pulled into Harrison's Market, a small grocery store about 10 minutes from our place. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few scattered cars and a silver pickup parked way in the back. I remember thinking how quiet everything felt, like the whole town had gone still. Inside, the store was nearly deserted. Just the hum of the coolers and that faint holiday playlist playing overhead. I grabbed a basket and started down the baking aisle, humming along to some cheap remix of Monster Mash. That's when I noticed him. At the far end of the aisle, near the flour and sugar, stood a man, mid-30s maybe, wearing a gray jacket and a black baseball cap. He wasn't looking at the shelves. He was looking at me. I didn't want to make eye contact, but I could feel his gaze following me as I moved. Every time I'd glance toward the corner of the aisle, he was still there, pretending to look at something but never really moving. I forced myself to ignore it, grabbed the frosting and sprinkles, and headed toward the checkout. The cashier, a young guy maybe our age, was too busy scrolling through his phone to notice the tension on my face. "That'll be $6.82, he said without looking up. As I handed him the cash, I glanced behind me. The man was at the end of the next aisle now, still watching. I left the store fast, clutching the bag to my chest as I made my way to my car. My heart was beating harder than I wanted to admit. Once inside, I locked the doors immediately, feeling ridiculous for how scared I was over some random guy. When I looked in my rearview mirror before pulling out, I saw the man exit the store too. He walked slowly toward that silver pickup I'd noticed earlier. The drive home was quiet, almost soothing at first. Maple Hollow wasn't a big place. Most of the houses were spread out, old and surrounded by bare trees that looked like skeletons in the glow of the streetlights. Halfway home, I noticed headlights appear behind me. They weren't tailgating me exactly, but they stayed at a steady distance no matter how fast or slow I went. Probably just heading the same way, I told myself under my breath. But when I turned down Birchwood Lane, the headlights followed. My heart started to pound again. Birchwood was a dead-end street. If they followed me all the way down, they'd have to turn around at some point. As I slowed into our driveway, the car behind me crawled by at maybe 5 miles an hour. I couldn't see inside. The windows were tinted dark. The car paused, just long enough to make me freeze, then sped off down the street. I exhaled shakily and went inside. Lena was sitting cross-legged on the couch scrolling through Netflix. "Find the frosting?" she asked, not looking up. "Yeah," I said, setting the bag on the counter. "Hey, this is gonna sound weird, but I think someone followed me home." She looked up then, frowning. "What do you mean?" "I saw this guy at the store. He kept staring at me, and then there was this car that slowed down right in front of the house. Maybe he just lives around here," she said, trying to sound casual, but her eyes flicked toward the front window. "What kind of car?" "Dark sedan, tinted windows. Didn't see the plate." Before she could say anything else, the doorbell rang. We both froze. Lena frowned. "Who the hell?" She stood up and tiptoed toward the door, peeking through the peephole. I waited. After a few seconds, she whispered, "There's someone out there." My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "Who?" I don't know. He's wearing some kind of mask. Like a cheap plastic one." My stomach twisted. "What's he doing?" "Just standing there." She turned back toward me, whispering, "Should I open it?" "Hell no," I hissed. Just ask what he wants." She hesitated, then cracked the door an inch, the chain still on. "Can I help you?" she called. Silence. She waited. "Sir? Do you need something?" Still nothing. Then suddenly he took one slow step forward. Lena slammed the door shut and locked it, her face pale. "He didn't say a word," she said, voice shaking. "He just stared at me through the crack." I peeked through the blinds by the window. No one was on the porch anymore. But across the street, parked under the dim glow of a streetlight, was the same car. We tried to calm ourselves down, telling each other it was just some idiot trying to scare people on Halloween. But that didn't explain how he knew which house was ours. A few minutes later, as the cookies baked in the oven, we were sitting at the table when a loud thud echoed from below us. Lena's eyes went wide. We both froze, staring at the basement door on the far wall. Then came another thud, and another, like someone dropping something heavy, then dragging it. I stood up slowly, my knees weak. "We don't have anything down there that could make that noise." Lena shook her head silently. I crept toward the basement door and placed my ear against it. Faint shuffling. Footsteps. "Call the cops," I whispered. She nodded, grabbing her phone with trembling hands. I pressed my body against the door as quietly as I could. The steps got closer, stopping right at the bottom of the stairs. Then, silence. I swear I could feel someone standing down there just on the other side of that door. Lena mouthed, "They're on their way." I nodded, barely breathing. For a few seconds, everything was still. Then came a quiet metallic click, the sound of the basement window latch being moved. My skin crawled. He'd gotten in through there. "Come on," I whispered, pulling Lena toward the front door. We slipped outside and ran to my car barefoot, not even locking the front door behind us. I drove 3 blocks down and parked near a 24-hour laundromat, waiting for the red and blue lights to finally appear. When the police arrived and searched the house, they found the basement window broken open from the outside. There were dirty footprints leading across the concrete floor and up the first few steps. But that was it. Whoever it was had already left. The car was gone too. The cops took our statements, searched the area, and told us to stay somewhere else for the night. We slept on a friend's couch, too scared to even close our eyes for long. When we came back the next morning, there were muddy shoe prints on the back porch that hadn't been there the night before, like someone had come back and circled the house. The police never found him. We moved out a month later. Sometimes, when I drive through Maple Hollow and past Birchwood Lane, I still catch myself glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a pair of headlights following me again. Because whoever that man was, he didn't break in to steal anything. He came for us, and I still don't know why. I still remember the way the air smelled that evening, that crisp, leafy chill that only shows up at the tail end of October. It was 2018, and I was 13, living in a quiet neighborhood outside of Maple Hollow, a small town in upstate New York. Everyone called it the town that never changed, and that was mostly true. The same old houses, same people walking their dogs every morning, same rusty water tower you could see from almost anywhere. That Halloween was supposed to be simple, one last night of trick-or-treating before high school made us too old for it. At least, that's how my friends and I saw it. There were 4 of us that year. Liam, Tessa, Josh, and me, Riley. Liam lived 2 streets over from me, the kind of kid who always wore the same green hoodie and spoke before thinking. Tessa was the smart one, always the planner, always with some sarcastic comment ready. And Josh was the quiet one, taller than all of us, with this weird calm that made you think he wasn't scared of anything. We'd been planning this Halloween for weeks. Not the costumes, those we threw together last minute, but the route. We had this big idea that we'd hit the Ridge, a stretch of hilltop homes where the rich folks lived. Everyone knew they handed out full-sized candy bars up there, but it was a long walk from our part of town. And if we wanted to make it before curfew, we'd have to start early. Except we didn't. I remember sitting on my front steps, watching the streetlights flicker on as the sky turned that deep blue color right before full dark. Leaves rustled down the pavement. A few kids in costumes ran past with pillowcases already half full of candy, their laughter echoing down the street. I checked my phone. 5:07 p.m. Then I heard Liam's voice. "Yo, Riley, you ready or what?" He came jogging up the sidewalk, a cheap skull mask pushed to the top of his head and his hoodie zipped all the way up. Behind him were Tessa, in a witch hat and black jeans, and Josh, wearing this rubber werewolf mask he'd found at the dollar store. I stood, pulling down my own mask, a cracked white one that looked like a mix between a clown and something from a horror movie. "You guys took forever," I said. "Had to wait for Tessa." Liam teased. "I was fixing your stupid mask strap," she shot back. "Yeah, sure," Josh said quietly. "Let's just move, we're already late." We started through the neighborhood, stopping at houses along the way. The usual stuff: polite trick-or-treat, greetings, thank yous, candy rustling into our bags. Nothing special. It felt normal, maybe too normal. The sun dipped below the trees, leaving only the orange glow of porch lights and carved pumpkins. Somewhere down the street, someone was blasting Monster Mash. At one house, an older guy in a flannel shirt said, "You kids better hurry, it's getting late for the little ones." He smiled, but his words stuck in my head. We weren't little kids anymore. And yet, we were still out here with pillowcases and masks, trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. By the time we reached the bottom of Maple Ridge Road, it was already past 8. The air felt colder up there, sharper somehow, and the houses were bigger, spaced far apart, each one lit by a single glowing porch light. "Man," Liam said, out of breath. "These people are living good." "They better be giving out the good stuff," I said, smiling under my mask. "Let's go, come on," Tessa urged. "We've got maybe half an hour before lights start going out." We jogged from house to house, bags growing heavier with each stop. Sure enough, full-size Snickers, Kit Kats, even a few bags of chips. It felt worth the hike. By the time we hit the last house, Most of the porch lights had gone dark. The streets were quiet, no laughter, no kids, no cars, just the wind. Josh checked his phone. It's 9 to 10, we should head back. We all agreed. We started down the hill, following the curve of the road that led back toward the woods separating the ridge from our neighborhood. That's when I noticed him. He was walking up the opposite side of the street, maybe 50 yards ahead. At first I thought he was just another late trick-or-treater, maybe a dad looking for his kid. But as we got closer, it became clear he wasn't carrying a bag or wearing a costume. Just a dark hoodie pulled over his head, his hands deep in his pockets. "Don't stare," Tessa muttered. "Why not?" Liam asked. "Because it's weird," she hissed. We crossed to the other side of the street, pretending not to notice him. But as we passed, he turned his head slightly, just enough for the streetlight to hit his face. I couldn't make out much, just pale skin and something off. Like his expression didn't match his body language. His lips were twitching, like he was trying not to smile. My stomach tightened. Once we were a few houses past him, I whispered, "Did you see that guy's face?" "Yeah," Liam said. "What the hell's he doing out here? Probably just lives around here," Josh muttered, though he didn't sound convinced. We kept walking, speeding up just a little. I looked over my shoulder once. The man was still standing under the streetlight, facing our direction. The only way back home was down Hollow Creek Trail, a narrow path that cut through the woods and opened near the high school. We'd taken it during the day a dozen times, but at night it was different, just a tunnel of trees and shadows. "Let's just take the main road," Tessa said. "It's longer, but we'll get home faster through the trail," Liam interrupted. "Come on, it's fine." Josh shrugged. "I'll go whichever way you guys want." I hesitated, staring at the dark line of trees at the bottom of the hill. The wind moved through the branches, making them sway. "Fine," I said. "Let's just go. But if something jumps out, I'm blaming you, Liam." He laughed, leading the way. We stepped onto the dirt path, our sneakers crunching over dry leaves. The only light came from our phone flashlights, bouncing over the trail and catching glimpses of tree trunks. After a few minutes, the sound of our footsteps was all there was. Then, somewhere behind us, a crunch. We froze. "Please tell me that was one of you," Tessa whispered. "Nope," Liam said softly. "Probably an animal," Josh said, though he slowly turned his flashlight toward the noise. "Nothing. Just empty woods." We started walking again. Faster this time. My heart was thudding hard enough that I could hear it. Then came another crunch, closer this time. "Okay, that's not an animal," Liam muttered. I turned around. Just at the edge of the light, something moved. A dark figure stepping behind a tree. "Run," Josh said quietly. And we did. The sound of leaves and snapping twigs erupted behind us as we tore down the trail. My mask kept slipping down my face, making it harder to breathe, so I ripped it off and kept running. "Go left," Liam yelled. We veered off the main path, crashing through bushes, branches slapping our arms and faces. I looked back once, just enough to see a beam of light flicker between the trees. The man had a flashlight now. We stumbled down a small slope, hitting a patch of wet ground near a creek. I nearly fell, catching myself on a rock. Tessa wasn't so lucky. She slipped and let out a sharp yelp. "Tess, come on," I shouted, grabbing her hand. She got up, panting hard. "I saw him," she gasped. "He's right behind us." We crossed the creek, our shoes soaking through, and scrambled up the opposite bank. My lungs burned, and my chest felt tight. The light was still moving behind us, slower now, methodical. "He's toying with us," Josh said quietly. That thought made my blood run cold. We kept going until we found a clearing with an old shed, probably from when the area used to be farmland decades ago. Its door was half broken, hanging by one hinge. "In here," Liam whispered. We crowded inside, trying to stay silent. The air smelled like rot and wet wood. Through a gap in the boards, I could see faint light moving through the trees. The beam stopped. Then it turned toward the shed. My stomach dropped. We didn't breathe. Didn't move. The light grew brighter. Then it flicked off. Darkness swallowed everything. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds, I couldn't tell. The woods outside were silent. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. Then, from behind the shed, a voice. Low, rough, too close. "You kids lost?" It wasn't loud. It was just right there. Like he was standing inches from the wall. Tessa covered her mouth to keep from crying out. Josh held a finger to his lips. The voice came again. "I can help you find your way." Then the sound of something scraping against the side of the shed. A hand, maybe. Wood creaking. Liam whispered, barely audible. "We can't stay here." He nodded toward the back corner, where the wall had a small hole leading out to the woods. We crawled through one by one, moving as quietly as possible. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Once we were out, we bolted again, no more light. Just running blind. Behind us, the shed door slammed open. I don't remember much of the run back. Just flashes, trees, breath, pain in my legs. Somewhere along the way, we hit the end of the trail and stumbled out near the high school parking lot. The lights from the building felt unreal after all that darkness. We didn't stop until we reached the main road. Only then did we turn around. Nothing. No one following. No sound except our own gasping. Tessa was crying silently, her hands trembling. Liam bent over, clutching his knees. Josh looked back at the tree line and said, "He stopped once we hit the lights." We all knew what he meant. Whoever that man was, he didn't want to be seen. We walked the rest of the way home in silence. When I finally got back to my house, my mom was asleep. I didn't tell her. None of us told anyone. We just texted each other late that night, making sure everyone got home safe. The next morning, I woke to bright sunlight and birds chirping outside. For a moment, I wondered if I'd dreamed the whole thing, but when I picked up my shoes, they were still soaked with mud. Later that day, I met up with the others. None of us really talked about it, not properly. Just short, nervous comments. He didn't follow us home, right? Probably some creep from out of town. Let's just forget it. But I couldn't. Every Halloween since then, I've avoided that part of town. The ridge, the trail, everything. 2 years later, that old shed was torn down when the area got redeveloped. But sometimes, when I drive by at night, I still see that part of the woods, dark, quiet, untouched. And sometimes, just for a second, I swear I see a figure standing under the trees, still, watching, like he never left. I grew up in a quiet town called Fairview, a sleepy little place tucked between miles of forest and old farmland in northern Illinois. The kind of town where everybody knew each other's parents. Teachers still remembered your brother's name from 5 years ago. And Halloween was a pretty big deal. When I was 13, my parents finally let me go trick-or-treating without supervision. It was my first real taste of freedom. No dad waiting in the car, no mom tailing behind with a flashlight. Just me and my buddies Ryan, Cody, and Levi roaming the streets with pillowcases full of candy and fake blood drying on our faces. That Halloween night still feels vivid in my memory. The crisp air, the smell of burning leaves from chimneys, the sound of kids screaming and laughing in every direction. I can still feel that excitement buzzing in my chest, like this was the kind of night we'd talk about forever. But we had no idea it'd be the last time we'd ever trick-or-treat together. We met up around 5:30 outside Ryan's house on Maplewood Drive, all dressed up like we thought we looked cool. Ryan was a zombie football player. Levi was a werewolf. His mask kept fogging up. Cody was a cheap vampire, and I was a scarecrow, mostly because we found the costume in my dad's old boxes. "Yo, check it out," Ryan said, pointing across the street. Mr. Howard went all out this year. The man's yard was a Halloween dream, fake tombstones, fog machine, strobe lights, the works. There was even a motion sensor witch that cackled every time a kid walked by. We started hitting houses, laughing, shoving each other, and bragging about who had the most candy already. But after about an hour, we ran into a problem. Some of the best decorated houses had lines, like actual lines of kids wrapping around driveways. "Dude," Cody groaned, "I'm not waiting 20 minutes for one fun-size Snickers." One. Ryan, being the self-proclaimed brains of the group, said, "Let's go where no one else is. The houses that don't have decorations. Bet half of them still give out candy." "Or shut the door in our faces," Levi said, voice muffled behind his werewolf mask. Ryan shrugged. "Worth a shot." That was our mistake. We wandered a few blocks away from the crowd until we reached Hemlock Street, a dim, quieter part of town. Most houses there were older, the kind with creaky porches and flickering porch lights. Only a few pumpkins here and there, most already rotting. "Yo, this one's got a light on," Ryan said, pointing to a small brick house with a faded white door. There weren't any decorations, no jack-o'-lantern, no sign of Halloween spirit at all. Still, the porch light was on. Halloween rule of thumb. Light on means candy. "All right," I said, stepping forward. "Let's give it a shot." We all chorused, "Trick or treat." The door opened just a crack. A boy stood there around our age, maybe a year older. Pale skin, messy brown hair sticking to his forehead, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. He wore a dirty gray hoodie and jeans. No costume, no smile. He didn't say anything, just stared at us. Cody gave a small, awkward laugh. Trick or treat." The boy blinked, then slowly shut the door in our faces. We all stood there, confused. "Well, that was weird," Levi said, trying to laugh it off. "Maybe he's just shy," I suggested. Ryan snorted. "Or just an asshole." Then, like an idiot, he knocked again. The door opened again, faster this time. The same boy stood there, but now his expression was tight, angry. "You knocked again?" he hissed, voice sharp and trembling. Ryan smirked, lifting his candy bag. "We just thought maybe you forgot the candy part of Halloween, dude." The boy's jaw clenched. "Get off my porch." Ryan wasn't one to back down. He grinned wider. "Come on, man. Don't be that guy." Then the boy's voice cracked as he screamed, "If you knock again, I'll kill you." We froze. Levi let out a nervous chuckle. "Okay, yeah, time to go." But Ryan, always trying to prove something, pressed the doorbell. And held it. The buzzer rang in one long, piercing drone. From inside the house, we could hear footsteps thudding toward the door fast. "Ryan, stop," I hissed, grabbing his arm. The door burst open, and the boy was holding a knife. It wasn't just a kitchen knife. It looked old, long and strange, like something you'd see in a museum. The blade caught the porch light, gleaming with a dull yellow tint. We bolted. The kids screamed behind us. "You shouldn't have come here." We tore down Hemlock Street, our costumes flapping, candy spilling from our bags. The sound of his sneakers slapped the pavement behind us, that metallic clink of the knife echoing with every step. "Jesus, he's chasing us!" Cody yelled, breathless. "Don't look back," I shouted. We cut through lawns, stumbled over sprinklers, and darted between mailboxes. My lungs burned. I could hear him getting closer every few seconds. Then I spotted a woman dragging her trash bin to the curb. "Help! He's got a knife!" I screamed. She froze, eyes wide, then turned and ran back into her house, slamming the door. That hopeless feeling hit me hard, cold, and deep. We were on our own. Ryan veered toward an open garage 2 houses down. "In there!" he yelled. We followed. We ducked inside, all 4 of us gasping and shaking, and slammed the garage door down manually just as the boy reached it. Bang, bang, bang. He started kicking the metal. Hard. The sound echoed through the garage like a drumbeat from hell. "Holy shit," Levi whispered, pressing his back against the wall. "He's gonna come in." "No, he won't," I said, trying to convince myself. From inside the house, we heard a man's voice shout, "What the hell's going on out there?" The door from the kitchen swung open, and an older man in a flannel shirt appeared, holding a cordless phone in one hand and a pistol in the other. "What's happening?" he demanded. "There's some kid out there," I shouted. "He's got a knife." The man's face hardened. He walked over, lifted the garage door just enough to peek outside, then slammed it shut again. He grabbed the phone. "Yeah, I'm calling the cops." Those next few minutes felt like forever. The boy kept kicking and yelling from outside. Sometimes we could hear him scraping the blade against the door, this horrible metallic screech that made my stomach twist. Ryan was pale now, the cocky grin long gone. I didn't think he'd... "Shut up," I said. "Just shut up." The man stayed by the inner door, gun in hand, whispering to whoever was on the phone. "Yeah, corner of Hemlock and Ridgeview. Kid with a knife. He's trying to get into my garage." When the sirens finally came, it felt like oxygen returned to the world. Flashing blue and red lights filled the cracks of the garage door. The banging stopped. We heard yelling outside. A cop shouting, "Put the weapon down. Now." Then a scuffle, a shout, and silence. When the cops finally opened the garage, we all stepped out, trembling, our faces pale and eyes wide. The boy was face down on the pavement, his knife lying a few feet away. His hoodie was torn, his breathing ragged. He couldn't have been older than 14. One of the officers, a woman with tired eyes, crouched next to him. "Son, what were you doing?" He just muttered, voice flat. They wouldn't leave. Later, we found out more stuff that stuck with me for years. The kid's name was Eli Porter. His parents traveled constantly for work, leaving him alone for weeks at a time. The neighbors said he barely ever came outside, and when he did, he just wandered the yard or sat on the porch at night staring at the woods behind his house. The knife he used belonged to his dad's old collection. No one pressed charges because he was a minor, but he was taken to a facility somewhere upstate. For months, I couldn't stop thinking about him, about how close we'd all come to getting hurt, or worse. My mom found out the next day, of course. Word spreads fast in Fairview. She grounded me for 2 months and banned Halloween completely. Said she'd rather I hate her than end up dead. I didn't argue. It's been over a decade since that night. I drive past Hemlock Street sometimes on my way home from work. The old house where Eli lived is still there, but the porch light's always off. The place looks abandoned now, paint peeling, mailbox rusted, weeds covering the yard. Sometimes on Halloween, I see new kids walking around, laughing, not knowing what happened there years ago. They stop at every house, light or no light, but no one ever goes up that driveway. Maybe it's the way the wind seems to die when you walk near that house. Maybe it's the faint reflection in the front window, like someone's still standing there, watching. Or maybe, somehow, everyone just knows. Because every October 31st, that porch light flickers on for a few seconds at dusk. Then it goes dark again. I was 12 the year everything changed. Back then, Halloween was everything to me. The candy, the costumes, the cool air that smelled like smoke and pumpkin guts. It all made me feel like the world was bigger and more exciting than the small, quiet town I lived in. We just moved to Larkspur, Arizona, a flat stretch of neighborhoods that all looked the same: chain-link fences, dry lawns, and yellow streetlights that buzzed like dying flies. My parents were the kind of people who wanted me home before dark, but that Halloween night, they decided to loosen the leash. Mom said, "You can go with your friends, but I want you back by 8:30, got it?" I nodded, trying not to sound too excited. Dad laughed from behind the paper. "Don't eat too much candy or you'll be sick by morning." That was it. No more rules. Just me, my bike, and the night. My best friend Tyler lived about 2 miles away, near the newer part of town where the houses weren't all faded and peeling. He was already out front when I rolled up, dressed as a skeleton with a mask that lit up blue when he pressed a button on the battery pack. "Dude, you're late," he said, tossing me a look. "Had to wait for my mom to finish giving me the speech again," I said, rolling my eyes. He grinned. "Parents, man. You'd think we're 5. I was dressed as Red Hood from the Batman comics. Black leather jacket, red hoodie, and a cheap mask that kept fogging up from my breath. I thought I looked badass, even though the jacket was my dad's and way too big. Tyler's sister Ellie tagged along too, even though she was only 9. She was dressed as a witch, the glitter on her face already smudged. We hit the houses fast, laughing, running from porch to porch, trading candy. Every few minutes, Tyler would say something dumb like, "Bro, these fun-sized bars should be illegal. What's fun about less chocolate?" By 8 o'clock, my bag was heavy, my mask was damp, and I was thinking about heading home. Tyler wanted to hit one more street, but I told him my curfew was strict. "You sure you'll be good riding home alone?" he asked. "Yeah, it's fine," I said. "I do it all the time." That wasn't exactly true, but I didn't want him thinking I was a kid. The streets were mostly empty by the time I started heading back. The decorations looked different now, plastic skeletons swaying in the wind, flickering lights casting weird shapes on fences. My tires made soft, crunching sounds on the sidewalk as I pedaled, the cool night air hitting my cheeks. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how grown up I felt. Just me, my bike, and a bag full of candy. Then I saw him. He was standing near a cracked brick wall under one of those orange streetlights that barely lit anything. He had his hood up and a cigarette between his fingers, smoke curling up around his face. His shadow stretched long across the pavement. As I got closer, he turned his head and said, "Hey, nice costume, kid." His voice was raspy, kind of friendly, but not really. The kind of tone that sounds normal until your gut tells you something's off. "Thanks," I said, trying to sound casual. I slowed my bike a little. "What are you supposed to be?" he asked, stepping forward a bit. Red Hood, from Batman." "Oh yeah, I know that one," he said with a small grin. "Cool jacket. You make that yourself?" I shook my head. "Nah, it's my dad's." He laughed quietly. "Yeah, figured. Bit big on you." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. Then he said, "You get a lot of candy tonight?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I guess." He took another drag from his cigarette and then, almost too casually, said, "You mind if I get a couple? For the road, man. Haven't had any kids come by where I'm at." It didn't seem like a big deal. He looked older, maybe in his late 20s, tired. I figured he was just some guy down on his luck. "Sure," I said, and reached into my bag. I handed him a few mini Snickers. He took them, smiling. "Thanks, kid. Appreciate it." He chewed one, then nodded toward my bike. "That your ride?" "Yeah. Pretty sweet. You live around here?" My brain hesitated. I remembered what my mom said about strangers, but it felt rude to ignore someone who was just talking. "Yeah, just a few blocks that way." I lied, pointing the opposite direction of my house. He nodded, flicking the cigarette away. "Cool, cool." Then before I could react, he stepped closer. Too close. His shadow swallowed mine. "You should be careful riding around alone this late, man. Lot of weirdos out tonight." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, guess so." And that's when everything went sideways. All I remember next is a blur, a heavy thud against my head, maybe his fist, and then the world just dropped out. When I opened my eyes, the ground was cold and rough beneath my palms. My vision was swimming, my ears ringing. My bike was half on top of me, the chain twisted around my ankle. The guy was standing a few feet away, holding something shiny in his hand. A knife. "Hey," he said, his voice quieter now. "Give me the bike." I tried to say something, but my words came out slurred. What? "The bike," he said again, louder this time. "Now." My head was pounding so bad I could barely think. I kicked at the frame until it fell away from me, and he snatched it up like it was nothing. Then he looked down at my shoes. My new Nike Airs navy blue. Clean. The ones my older brother had given me the week before. "Nice kicks," he said, almost like a joke. "Take 'em off." I froze. "They're my brother's." "I can't." He stepped closer, knife catching the streetlight. "Take them off." I didn't move fast enough. The next punch wasn't as hard as the first, but it sent me down again. My eyes watered, my jaw stung, and I could taste blood. I didn't even fight when he knelt down and started untying the laces himself. He stuffed the shoes under his arm and looked at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "I'll leave you with your candy, though," he said, smirking. "Fair trade, right?" Then he got on my bike and pedaled off into the dark. I sat there for a while, shaking, socked feet pressed to the cold concrete. I didn't even cry at first. I just stared down the road, watching his shadow disappear between the streetlights. When I finally stood up, my head was throbbing, and my mouth tasted like metal. I picked up my candy bag. It had split a little, but most of it was still there. I remember walking the rest of the way home barefoot, every piece of gravel stabbing my feet. The air smelled like smoke and rotten leaves. Every house I passed was dark now, the decorations swaying quietly in the wind. Mom screamed when she saw me. "Oh my God, Eli, what happened?" Dad ran out from the living room, his face going pale. "Who did this to you?" I tried to explain, but the words came out all jumbled. They called the cops right away. 2 officers came by, one took notes while the other looked down the street with a flashlight, as if the guy might still be there. They never found him. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without seeing that streetlight, that flash of metal. I kept replaying his words, "I'll leave you with your candy though." It wasn't about the shoes, or even the bike. It was the way he said it, like he thought he'd done me a favor. Like he'd convinced himself he wasn't a monster because he let me keep something. I don't go out on Halloween anymore. Haven't in years. Sometimes, when I'm driving home late and I see someone standing under a streetlight, I still feel that same cold in my gut, because somewhere out there, that guy's probably still telling himself he's a good person, and I'm still that kid walking home barefoot in the dark, clutching a torn candy bag and pretending not to be scared. I never really believed in ghost stories, at least not until that Halloween night back in 2018. I was 21 then, still in college, and dating this girl named Tessa, who I later married. We'd been together for about a year, and Halloween had always been her favorite time of year. She was the type who'd start decorating in early October plastic skeletons on the porch, fake cobwebs across the doorway, pumpkin-scented candles in every room. Me? I was more into scary movies and staying inside. But that year, she wanted to do something different, something that would actually get our hearts racing. It was her idea to check out Camp Evergreen, an old Girl Scout retreat that had been abandoned for decades. Supposedly, a fire had broken out there in 1975, and one of the campers, a little girl named Lacey Burns, didn't make it out. Some locals swore her ghost still wandered the property after midnight, especially near the burnt-down mess hall. At first, I laughed it off, but the more we looked into it online, the creepier it got. Forums, local legends, old news clippings, it all lined up. And honestly, it sounded like the perfect Halloween thrill. We ended up convincing 6 friends to join us that night. So in total, there were 8 of us. Me, Tessa, Ryan, and Jules. They were dating too. Cody, Amber, Liam, and Holly. 3 cars, 2 baseball bats, and enough adrenaline to make us feel invincible. That night was cold for late October in Ohio, maybe around 60 degrees, but not freezing. The moon hung low and yellow, and the air smelled like wood smoke from somewhere far off. We rolled down the windows as we drove out past the edge of town, music playing low, that Halloween energy buzzing between us. About 20 minutes outside of Hammond, we turned down this narrow road that twisted through the woods. Somewhere along the way, I noticed this beat-up white cargo van parked under a bridge near a lake. One headlight was busted, and there was condensation fogging up the inside of the windshield. I thought maybe someone was sleeping in there, a fisherman or maybe a homeless guy. I didn't mention it to the group. I didn't want to freak anyone out before we even got there. When we finally reached the trail that led to the camp, it was already close to midnight. We parked along the gravel shoulder and stepped out, flashlights slicing through the darkness. The forest was dead quiet except for the crunch of our boots on fallen leaves and the occasional creak of branches overhead. "Man, this place gives me the creeps already," Ryan muttered, pulling his hoodie tighter. Tessa smirked. "Oh, come on, it's just trees and bugs. You guys are acting like we're in a horror movie." Amber pointed her flashlight down the path. "Yeah, and in horror movies, that's exactly what people say before they die." We all laughed nervously, trying to shake off the tension. The first 10 minutes felt like an adventure, joking, tossing rocks, whispering ghost stories, but then the woods started to feel heavier. The deeper we went, the more it felt like something was watching from behind the trees. After maybe half an hour, we came across the first old structure, a concrete foundation, half buried under moss and dead branches. Spray paint covered what was left of the walls. Pentagrams, initials, Lacey is here. Someone had built a makeshift fire pit nearby. Looks like people still come out here, Liam said. Yeah, I replied, gripping the metal bat I'd brought. Probably homeless folks. Let's not piss anybody off. We explored a few more ruins, took some pictures, and pretended to scare each other. Then, out of nowhere, we heard the crunch of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from behind us. Everyone froze. Yo, did one of y'all move? Ryan whispered. No one answered. The sound came again, leaves shifting, branches cracking softly. Then, from somewhere far off, maybe where we'd parked, we heard a sharp beep, beep. Tessa's face went pale. That's my car. That's my car horn. My stomach dropped. I remembered I'd left the windows cracked. Someone could have easily reached inside. We didn't even talk, we just ran. Flashlights bouncing, twigs snapping underfoot. I was in front with Ryan, my heart hammering against my ribs. When we reached the clearing, all 3 cars were still there, parked where we left them, but something felt off. The night was too quiet. Stay close, I said, gripping the bat tighter. Ryan, shine your light over there. He swung the beam toward Tessa's car, and I caught a glimpse of a shadow ducking behind one of the vehicles. Hey, who's there? I shouted, stepping forward. No response. Just the wind. We approached slowly. Nothing. Nobody. Then, headlights flared from down the road, a pair of bright white beams cutting through the trees. A van. The same white van I'd seen under the bridge. It rolled to a stop right across the trail entrance, blocking the only way out. Jesus Christ, Cody muttered. What the hell is that guy doing? The driver's door creaked open, and this tall, thin man stepped out. He wore a dark jacket, the collar pulled high, and his right hand stayed buried deep in his pocket. He looked at us and smiled, a slow, crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. Evenin', he said, his voice hoarse. You folks got a lighter on ya? Nobody answered. I could feel every hair on my arms stand up. Something about him, his tone, the way he stood, felt wrong. Predatory. Tessa whispered. Let's just go. Please, let's go. The man took a step closer, his boots crunching on gravel. Come on now. I just asked a question. Which one of you's got a light? I swallowed hard. My fingers clenched the bat so tight my knuckles hurt. We don't smoke, man. We're just leaving. He tilted his head, that smile still plastered on his face. Now why would you leave? Party's just getting started. For a second, I thought he was going to pull something out of that pocket. I couldn't tell if it was a gun, a knife, or nothing at all, but I wasn't about to find out. Get in the cars, I hissed to the group. Ryan's engine fired first. The sudden roar made the man flinch, and I saw his hand twitch inside his jacket. That was enough for me. I grabbed Tessa's hand, yanked her into our car, and slammed the doors locked. The man stepped into the middle of the trail, illuminated in the moonlight. He just stood there, staring at us, lips curling into that same sick grin. You kids should have stayed home tonight, he said softly. Then he started walking toward us. My brain went into autopilot. I floored it. Gravel sprayed out from under the tires as the car lunged forward. The van was blocking most of the road, but there was just enough room to squeeze by on the shoulder. We scraped a tree, but we made it through. Ryan and the others followed, tires screeching behind us. We didn't stop driving until we hit the main highway. Nobody said a word for a full 5 minutes, just the sound of engines and shaky breathing. Finally, Tessa whispered, "You think he was going to hurt us?" I looked at her. Her hands were trembling. "I don't know," I said quietly. But he wasn't there for a smoke. When we got back to my place, everyone piled into the living room, pale-faced and silent. Cody tried to laugh it off, saying maybe the guy was just some weirdo trying to scare us. But when we checked the news the next day, my blood went cold. There'd been reports of a white cargo van seen near the Eastbridge Forest area, the same direction we came from. A park ranger had found 3 burned-out tents and what looked like bloodstains on the ground near the old camp. The police never caught anyone, but they warned people to stay clear of that trail after dark. I never told my parents what happened that night, and I never went back to Camp Evergreen. Sometimes, late at night when I'm driving home and see a van pulled over by the side of the road, I feel that same chill crawl up my spine. I can still hear that man's voice in my head. You kids should have stayed home tonight. And every Halloween since, I do exactly that. I was 14 that Halloween night back in 2019, living in a small California town called Riverside Grove, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's parents and you couldn't sneeze without someone mentioning it at church the next Sunday. I wasn't a bad kid. None of us were. But that night, we were feeling bold, that middle school kind of bold where you think you're grown, just because you've got a little candy money and no curfew until 10. There were 4 of us, me, Noah, Trent, Kyle, and Owen. Trent was the troublemaker, always the one saying, "Come on, what's the worst that could happen?" Kyle was his echo, a quiet kid who followed along because he hated being left out. Owen was the balance, smart, cautious, the one who usually talked us out of dumb ideas. And then there was me, the awkward one in the bright red and black Spider-Man costume, looking like I'd walked out of a comic book while my friends all looked like extras from a slasher flick. Trent had a skeleton mask with painted teeth that glowed faintly in the dark. Kyle wore a black hoodie and a cracked skull half-mask. Owen had on a weird latex mask that looked like a celebrity gone wrong, eyes too wide, mouth too perfect. We started the night like every other kid in town, buckets full of mini Snickers, laughing as we ran from porch to porch, tripping over fake gravestones and dodging teenagers with shaving cream cans. By 8:30, we'd hit all the good houses, and our pillowcases were heavy enough to tear at the seams. That's when Trent said, "Yo, bowling alley's still open. Let's hit it for a bit." The local bowling alley, Lucky Lanes, was kind of our hangout spot. It always smelled like cheap pizza, shoe spray, and something old like rainwater stuck in the carpet for 20 years. We played 3 games, drank too much soda, and talked about what came next. That's when Trent got that look again, the one that meant bad ideas were brewing. "Let's go scare the Henderson twins," he said, grinning. Kyle perked up immediately. "Those dudes still owe me $5. Owen frowned. "You serious, man? It's late." Trent shrugged. "Not that late. Just ring the bell, jump out, classic Halloween stuff. No one gets hurt." I should have said no. I really should have. But there's something about being 14 and trying to keep up with your friends that makes you do things your gut knows are stupid. So we left the alley and started walking down Sycamore Street, a quiet neighborhood with big oak trees that dropped leaves like confetti across the sidewalks. The air smelled like smoke and cold candy wrappers. We were laughing, whispering, trying to stay quiet as we approached the first house. It belonged to Mrs. Henderson, one of those nice old ladies who gave out full-size candy bars. Her grandsons, the twins, were our targets. Trent whispered, "All right, Noah, you hide by the fence. We'll wait by the yard and jump out when she opens the door." I crouched down behind the white picket fence, leaves crunching under my cheap Spider-Man shoes. The plan was simple. Ring, wait, jump, laugh. Only before I even had a chance to knock, I noticed something. Across the street, under the dull glow of a flickering streetlight, a dark sedan rolled to a stop. The windows were down, and 2 men sat inside. At first I didn't think much of it, maybe parents waiting for their kids. But then I caught the driver staring at me. He was thin, with sharp features, a baseball cap pulled low, and a cigarette dangling from his mouth. The guy next to him was the opposite, thick neck, broad shoulders, and a shaved head that reflected the streetlight. To not look suspicious, I gave a small wave and forced a smile. The thin guy didn't react. The big one did. He leaned forward, squinting. Something about that look made the hairs on my neck stand up. "No answer?" Owen whispered from the yard. I shook my head. "Nah. Let's go, dude." We turned to leave. That's when I heard the car's engine revving lightly. When we started walking, it started too. Not fast, just keeping pace. Trent laughed nervously. Yo, maybe they're just lost, Owen muttered. Then why are they following us? We turned the corner at the end of the street, pretending not to notice. But the car followed slow, deliberate. Cut through the alley, I said, pointing. The alley ran between two houses, up a steep little incline that opened to another road on the other side. It was pitch black, no lights except the faint orange glow from the street behind us. Y'all sure about this? Owen asked. Trent smirked. Better than walking in front of that car. We hurried in. Our sneakers scraped against cracked pavement as our shadows stretched along the brick walls. Halfway through, I glanced back. That's when I saw him. The big man had gotten out of the car. He wasn't running, he was marching. Fast, heavy footsteps echoing off the walls. Holy shit, run, I shouted. We took off up the hill. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, the sound of our feet slapping concrete, but my costume shoes, those cheap, flat things, were slipping off every few steps. Come on, Noah, Trent yelled. I can't, these shoes. I tried to keep up, but my foot slid out of the sole, and I nearly fell. Owen doubled back and tried to help me, but I waved him off. Go, just go. They hesitated for a second before taking off again. By the time I made it out of the alley, the car had looped around the block. The headlights blinded me as it pulled up fast. Tires screeching. I froze, throwing my hands in the air. The car stopped inches from me. The big guy got out, face red, breath steaming in the cold. Where the hell are your friends? He barked. I stammered. What do you mean? He stepped closer, towering over me. You think it's funny? Huh? Throwing eggs at people's cars? What? No, we didn't do anything. Behind him, the skinny one leaned out the window. Just call him back, kid. Don't make this worse. I swear we weren't. Before I could finish, the big man shouted again. Get your buddies back here right now. I turned to look down the street, no sign of them. My pulse was hammering. I could barely breathe. Then I heard Owen yelling from a distance, Hey, leave him alone. He and the others had come back, stupidly brave, shouting from the corner. The skinny guy finally got out of the car and raised his hands like he was defusing a situation. Yo, easy, Frank, he said. It's not them, they're kids. Frank stopped, glaring at me. Then who the hell threw those eggs? We don't know, I said. My voice cracked. After a tense silence, the skinny one muttered something to Frank. Finally, Frank backed off, cursing under his breath. You kids should go home before you get yourselves killed. We didn't need to be told twice. We bolted down the street, cutting back toward the bowling alley, hearts racing, lungs burning. Once inside, the warm smell of pizza and old carpet never felt so safe. We collapsed into a booth, silent. No one said anything for a long time. Then Owen spoke, voice shaking. They really thought we were those kids? Trent rubbed his face. Man, I don't buy that. You saw how he looked at us. Yeah, I said, and they kept circling. That wasn't random. Because they did as we waited for our parents to pick us up. That same dark sedan passed by 3 more times. Each time, slower. Each time, both men staring. When my mom's car finally pulled up, I didn't even wait for her to stop fully before jumping in. Later that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying it all in my head. The way they followed. The way they looked at me. The way Frank said killed, like he meant it. Even now, I can't stop wondering, what if we hadn't run? What if they hadn't mistaken us for someone else? Because that night, it didn't feel like a misunderstanding. It felt like we'd just interrupted something we were never supposed to see. And every Halloween since, whenever I walk past Sycamore Street and see those flickering lights by that same alley, I still feel that same cold rush through my chest. The reminder that not every mask you see on Halloween is part of a costume. I grew up in a small town called Maple Hollow, Ohio, one of those quiet Midwestern suburbs where everyone waves. Lawns are manicured, and the loudest thing you'd hear at night was the sound of crickets. My mom, Linda, has always been the kind of woman who could make a house feel like a home, soft-spoken, kind-hearted, with a laugh that used to fill every room. But there's one thing she's never laughed about Halloween. Even when my brother and I were little, she let us go trick-or-treating, but she never got into it. No pumpkins, no spider webs, no boo signs on the porch. Just a single bowl of candy by the door and her sitting inside with all the lights off. Every year I'd ask why she hated Halloween, and every year she'd brush it off. "It's just not my thing," she'd say. But this year was different. We were sitting in her living room. Late one October night, the wind was rattling the old maple tree outside, and the smell of rain hung in the air. I was 26 now, old enough to see her not just as my mom, but as a person, someone with a past. She sat across from me, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea, staring into nothing. When I asked her again, "Mom, why do you hate Halloween so much?" she didn't laugh it off this time. She just sighed, long and heavy, like she'd been carrying something for decades. "I guess it's time you knew," she said quietly. "But I need you to promise me something, Ben." "What's that?" "Promise me that after I tell you this, you won't ever go near Willow Street on Halloween night." I frowned. "Mom, that street's just a bunch of old houses now. What's so? Promise me." Her voice cracked the kind of crack you don't ignore. I nodded, and that's when she told me. She grew up in a town called Ridgefield, Wisconsin, not too far from Milwaukee. Back in 1978, she was 9 years old, living with her parents and her two siblings, Tommy, her little brother, and Diane, her older sister. Halloween was her favorite holiday back then. She told me how she'd spent weeks planning her costume, a homemade Minnie Mouse outfit her mom sewed for her. Diane was Daisy Duck and Tommy, of course, was Mickey. Her dad had promised to take them trick-or-treating, just like every year. It was cold that night, the kind of October chill that crept into your jacket no matter how tight you pulled it. She remembered her dad lighting a cigarette, telling them to stick together. They went door to door, the smell of burning leaves filling the air, streetlights glowing orange through the fog. Everything was perfect until they got to the end of Willow Street. That house, she said they usually skipped it. Even her dad didn't like walking past it. It belonged to an older man named Mr. Hartley. He was huge, bald, pale, with these deep-set eyes that never seemed to blink. He lived alone. Nobody ever saw him during the day. That night, though, his porch light was on, and when her dad said, "Come on, let's make this the last one," the kids followed, even though Linda said her stomach felt weird, like something was pulling her back. She remembered the door opening before they even knocked. Mr. Hartley stood there, smiling too wide, his yellow teeth catching the light. He didn't say anything at first, just reached into a big ceramic bowl and dropped pieces of candy into each of their bags. "Happy Halloween," he said finally, voice low and scratchy. Tommy whispered, "He smells funny." Her dad laughed it off and said thank you. They started heading down the driveway when another group of kids came running up the sidewalk, maybe 5 or 6 of them laughing, tearing open candy wrappers as they went. Linda said she didn't even notice it at first, just that one of the boys stopped walking. He was standing under the streetlight, clutching his jaw. Then he started coughing. At first it sounded like choking. Then it got worse, deep, hacking, painful coughs that echoed through the neighborhood. Her dad rushed over, thinking the boy was choking on candy. But then Linda saw something dark hit the pavement. She thought it was chocolate until she saw the red, thick, wet red splattering across his costume. And then, as he opened his mouth, more blood poured out. His scream turned into a gurgle. Linda's voice trembled when she told me this part. He tried to say something," she whispered. But when he opened his mouth again, his tongue fell out. Just fell out. She said people started screaming, kids dropping their candy bags, running, but more of them began coughing. A girl in a princess dress doubled over, blood pouring down her chin. A boy in a cowboy hat dropped to his knees, clawing at his throat. Linda turned to her brother Tommy and froze. Blood was dripping from his mouth too. "Daddy," she screamed. "Daddy, help him." Her dad dropped to his knees, pulling Tommy close. But there was too much blood. It was everywhere, all over Tommy's costume, all over her dad's hands, soaking into the grass. Linda said her father started shouting for help, but nobody came. The whole street was chaos, children collapsing, candy bags scattered, porch lights flickering. And then she looked up. Mr. Hartley was sitting on his porch, rocking in a chair, smoking a pipe. He was watching everything, laughing. "The end is coming, children," he shouted. "The end is coming." Her dad set Tommy down and ran toward the porch, yelling, "What the hell did you do, you sick son of a bitch?" Hartley just laughed harder. "You'll all see. The candy cleanses them." That's when the sirens started. Someone had called the cops. Linda said she remembered flashes of red and blue lights. Officers shouting. Her dad screaming for someone to help his son. Then gunfire. Hartley dropped his pipe, stumbled off the porch, and fell face first into the dirt. The cops swarmed the house, breaking down the door. The rest of that night was a blur. Ambulances, flashlights, crying parents. Tommy survived barely. The doctors told them he'd swallowed tiny fragments of metal razor blades hidden in the candy. They had cut through his tongue and throat. He couldn't talk for months. To this day he speaks with a slur, though Mom says he doesn't remember that night at all. When police searched Hartley's house, they found things that made even the seasoned officers sick: boxes of candy filled with chopped razor blades, dozens of Polaroids of neighborhood kids, and tools nobody could make sense of. They said Hartley had been mixing ground metal into melted chocolate and wrapping it himself. He'd been handing it out for years. That night was just the first time someone noticed. Mom stopped talking for a long time after that. She just sat there, staring out the window. The rain had started tapping softly against the glass. I finally asked, "What happened to him?" She swallowed hard. They said he died before they even cuffed him. One of the bullets hit him in the neck. And the house burned down a week later. Nobody knows how. She looked at me then, eyes glossy. "Ben, every Halloween, I see his face. I see those kids. I can still smell that blood. I can still hear my brother choking." I didn't know what to say. All I could do was reach across the table and take her hand. After a while, she whispered, "You see now why I don't celebrate it? I can't. Every pumpkin, every costume, every little laugh outside, it takes me back there." I nodded. "Yeah, Mom, I get it." We sat there in silence, the old clock ticking on the wall. Then, just as I stood up to leave, I heard something faint, a child's laugh outside the window. It was just trick-or-treaters passing by. But for a split second, I saw Mom's face go white. She whispered, "Sometimes I swear I can still hear them." That night, as I was driving home, I passed Willow Street, or what used to be it. The house was gone now, replaced by a patch of empty land. But I swear I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a faint glow, like the ember of a pipe. And maybe it was just the wind or my mind playing tricks, but I could have sworn I heard a raspy voice whisper through the dark, "The end is coming, children." I didn't look back. I've never really been into parties, especially not the kind where everyone pretends to be something they're not: monsters, devils, zombies. Maybe that's why Halloween always felt weird to me. I didn't hate it, but I never looked forward to it either. This year was supposed to be like any other, handing out candy, maybe catching a late-night horror movie. But my friends had other plans. "Come on, man. It's one night. Don't be that guy," Jake said as he tossed a cheap plastic mask onto my couch. "I am that guy," I replied, half smiling. "The guy who doesn't go to haunted house parties in abandoned buildings." "Not abandoned," Tessa chimed in, applying eyeliner in the reflection of her phone. "It's just old, and it's supposed to be the best Halloween party in the city this year. Everyone's talking about it." "Everyone meaning you too," I muttered, glancing at the mask, a cracked skull design with faded paint. "Bro," Jake said, leaning forward, "you've been cooped up for months since the breakup. You need this. You need to see people, have a drink, just exist for a night, all right?" I sighed. He wasn't wrong. I'd been avoiding crowds since Claire left in June. Something about being around people made me feel like I was being watched, even when I wasn't. "Fine," I said, reluctantly grabbing the mask. "But I'm not staying long." Jake grinned. "That's what they all say." The party was in an old two-story house on the corner of Jefferson and Pine, one of those late 1800s homes that looked like it belonged in a ghost story. The owners had turned it into a local legend every Halloween, charging a small entry fee for their haunted walkthrough before leading guests to the main event out back. From the sidewalk, the place already looked intense, fake corpses hanging from the trees, gravestones in the yard, speakers playing distant screams. It smelled like fog machine mist and candle wax. "Dude, they went all out," Jake said, slapping me on the shoulder. "Yeah," I replied flatly, watching a woman dressed as a nun pretend to stab a rubber torso near the porch. Tessa grabbed my arm. "Okay, let's just go through the haunted part real quick and then head to the actual party." "It's supposed to be insane." I nodded. The mask felt suffocating against my face, but I kept it on. Didn't want to ruin their fun. The haunted walkthrough started in what used to be the house's front parlor. The walls were lined with red lights pulsing in rhythm to a low, bass-heavy soundtrack. Fog filled the floor, and every few seconds a strobe light would flash, revealing actors in creepy masks jumping out from behind curtains. It was chaotic but kind of fun until it wasn't. We moved through a narrow hallway filled with hanging body bags. I remember ducking under one, and then another flash. The light hit my eyes, and I had to blink several times to clear the white spots from my vision. When I looked around again, everyone was gone. "Jake?" I called out. "Tess?" No answer. The music was still playing, but everything felt muffled now, like I was underwater. The next strobe flash came, and I saw faint footprints on the floor ahead of me, red paint, maybe part of the theme. I followed them toward a faint line of lights that seemed to guide visitors deeper into the maze. I took about 5 steps before I heard it, footsteps behind me. Not the rubbery squeak of shoes on a decorated set, but heavy, uneven ones. I turned around. Someone stood there, a man in a gray hoodie, plain black jeans, and a mask that didn't match any of the props. It was just white, smooth, with 2 eye holes. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "You work here?" He didn't respond, just tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. I took a step back. "All right, man, chill. You're doing a good job. You got me." That's when I noticed the glint in his hand. It wasn't a prop. He raised it slightly, and I could make out the shape of a knife, its blade catching one of the pulsing lights. "Whoa, hey." He lunged. I barely got my arm up before pain ripped through it like fire. The knife cut deep, and I screamed, shoving him backward. He stumbled, then came at me again, slashing wildly. I ducked and bolted toward the end of the hallway, clutching my bleeding arm. The lights blurred together as I ran, dodging hanging corpses and fake blood. The sound of his footsteps followed, fast and ragged. I could hear him panting through the mask. "Help!" I yelled, my voice lost in the music. "Someone help!" No one came. Everyone probably thought it was part of the show. I burst through a final curtain and stumbled into the main party area, a huge room filled with people in costumes, dancing under orange and purple lights. The bass was thundering. I could feel my heartbeat sinking with it. Then he hit me again. We crashed onto the floor, his knee pressing into my chest. I saw the knife rise, dripping my own blood. I grabbed his wrist with both hands, screaming, "Get him off me!" But the crowd laughed. They thought it was an act. He pushed harder. The blade came inches from my throat. Then someone shouted, "Yo, what the fuck?" And the weight lifted off me. Jake had tackled the guy from behind. They wrestled for a moment before the attacker twisted and plunged the knife into Jake's side. Twice. "No!" I yelled, crawling toward him as Jake fell, blood pouring from his shirt. The music finally stopped. People screamed and scattered. The masked man looked around wildly, as if he just realized what he'd done. Then he bolted, shoving people aside, vanishing out the back door into the night. I remember kneeling beside Jake, pressing my hand over his wound. "Stay with me, man. Please stay with me." He looked at me, dazed. "I told you. You needed this night out," he said weakly, trying to smile. "Shut up. Don't talk." Someone yelled for 911. Someone else started crying. I remember the sirens arriving, the flashing red and blue lights, the blur of EMTs pulling us apart. Jake survived, barely. 13 stitches for me. 3 months in recovery for him. The cops caught the guy a few days later hiding in a motel off Route 42. He said the strobe lights messed with his head, that he didn't remember anything after walking into the haunted house. Said something about feeling like he was being controlled, that the lights told him to kill. Bullshit. He wasn't insane. He knew exactly what he was doing. Still, the news loved it. Halloween party turns to horror. They made it sound like a movie. For us, though, it was real. Now, every Halloween, when I hear the laughter of kids trick-or-treating, or see the flicker of strobe lights from someone's yard, I feel that tightness in my chest again. People say masks let you hide who you are. But that night, I realized something else. Sometimes they show you exactly what's been hiding underneath all along. I still remember that Halloween like it was yesterday. 2015, the one that fell on a Saturday. I was 14, a freshman, and it ended up being the last time any of us ever went trick-or-treating. Back then, it didn't feel like an ending, though. It just felt like one of those nights you wait for all year, the kind of night where you didn't want to grow up just yet. We had this plan, me, my best friend Tyler, and the rest of our crew. Jamie, Cody, and Reese. We were all gonna meet up at Tyler's place, go trick-or-treating around the neighborhood, and then crash at his house for a big Halloween sleepover. His parents were pretty chill about it, just gave us the usual curfew warning. Back by 9:30, his mom said as she was setting out chips and sodas on the counter. And no funny business. Tyler grinned. Yeah, sure thing, Mrs. Sanders. We'll be angels. She laughed. That's what scares me. It was one of those crisp, cool Midwestern nights, air cold enough to see your breath, but not enough to make you uncomfortable. Leaves were crunching underfoot, porch lights flickering orange, fake cobwebs draped over every mailbox. The smell of burning pumpkins and damp grass hung in the air. We hit the streets right at 6:30. For the first 2 hours it was all laughs, running from house to house, swapping candy, trying to one-up each other's costumes. I was dressed as a cheap-looking vampire, fake fangs and all. Reese was a zombie football player, and Cody was some sort of skeleton wearing a hoodie that glowed in the dark. But around 8, when most of the little kids had already gone home, we decided we weren't done yet. Yo, Cody said, grinning through his mask. You know what we should do? Tyler rolled his eyes. What? Egg Mr. Collins' house again? Nah, man, Cody said. Let's go check out the high school. We all looked at him like he'd lost it. The high school? I said. On a Saturday night? He smirked. You haven't heard? The seniors have this place out back behind the football bleachers. They sneak out there to smoke and, do stuff. Reese raised an eyebrow. What kind of stuff? Dude, Cody said, lowering his voice. They got magazines, those kind of magazines. Tyler groaned. Are you serious? You dragged us all the way out here for nudie mags? Cody shrugged. Hey, it's not like we're doing anything else. And that's how we ended up heading toward the high school instead of calling it a night. The place was about a 10-minute walk from Tyler's house. By the time we got there, most of the neighborhood lights were off. The school itself sat like a dark brick tomb at the end of Maple Street, the parking lot empty. The flag barely visible under the moonlight. We cut across the field, our flashlights bouncing weakly against the bleachers. The air smelled like wet metal and soil. I could hear the distant buzz of a streetlight and the hum of some old power box. Yo, over here, Jamie whispered, pointing toward the tree line. I think this is where they hang out. We followed him through the grass, pushing past branches and weeds until we found this small clearing half hidden behind some old maintenance sheds. There were beer cans scattered around, cigarette butts, and a few torn pages from magazines half buried in the dirt. Holy crap, Cody said, picking one up. Told you they were here. Tyler shook his head, half laughing. You're a sick dude, man. Hey, you're the one looking, Cody shot back. It was all harmless fun until Reese wandered off. He said he had to take a leak and walk deeper into the trees. The rest of us stayed behind, joking and laughing under our breath. The sound of leaves crunching somewhere in the dark. A minute later, we heard him call out, "Yo!" At first, it was normal, like he was trying to get our attention. But then his voice changed. There was something in it. Panic. Run. We froze for half a second, just long enough to see him sprinting out of the trees, face pale as paper. "What the hell?" I started. But he shoved me hard. "Run," he screamed again. So we did. We didn't think. We didn't look back. We just ran across the field, through the parking lot, until we were under the orange glow of a streetlight near the main road. I could barely breathe, heart pounding like crazy. Tyler turned to him, eyes wide. What the hell happened? Reese bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air. There was a guy, he said between breaths. He was standing behind a tree, just watching me. "Watching you?" I asked. Reese nodded, shaking. "Yeah, and..." He stopped for a second, his voice trembling. "He was doing stuff to himself, man." Cody let out a nervous laugh. "Dude, stop messing with us." "I'm not kidding," Reese snapped. He was just standing there, staring at me, smiling, like he'd been there the whole time. Nobody said anything after that. The only sound was the hum of the streetlight and the wind moving through the trees. We eventually walked back to Tyler's house, mostly in silence. His mom was asleep by the time we got in, so we crashed in the living room with the TV on mute. Nobody mentioned it again that night, but I could tell Reese wasn't faking it. He didn't talk much after that, kept glancing at the windows, wouldn't even go out to the kitchen alone. By morning, it was like nothing had happened. We were back to being dumb kids again, laughing and trading candy. That's the thing about being 14, you can convince yourself that whatever scared you the night before wasn't real. Except, sometimes, it was. About a year later, the summer after freshman year, a boy went missing in a town about 15 miles away, Brookhaven. I remember seeing his face on the flyers outside the grocery store. Blonde kid, maybe 10. They found his bike, but not him. Then a week later, the cops surrounded a guy's house on the outskirts of Brookhaven. He wouldn't come out. 3-hour standoff ended when the guy shot himself as they were breaking in. They never found the missing kid. I remember sitting in Tyler's basement when the story came on TV. Reese went pale, didn't say a word for a long time. Then, finally, he muttered, "That's him." We all looked at him. "What?" I asked. He pointed at the TV. The guy's mugshot was up, middle-aged, bald spot, heavy eyes, a faded scar across his cheek. "That's the guy," Reese said quietly. "The one I saw that night behind the school." Nobody laughed this time. Nobody even breathed. Tyler reached for the remote and turned off the TV. "You sure, man?" Reese nodded slowly. I'll never forget his face. After that, we didn't talk about it again. Not once. It just kind of hung there, something we all knew but never wanted to say out loud. Years later, I found out that guy had a record: indecent exposure, stalking, trespassing on school property. The cops thought he might have been connected to a few disappearances in nearby towns, but they never proved it. And sometimes I still think about that night, how close it came. How if Reese hadn't looked up when he did, maybe that guy would have done something worse. It's strange how one Halloween can stick with you forever. Now, every year when October rolls around and the porch lights start glowing again, I get that same chill in my chest. I see kids laughing, running down the street in their costumes, and part of me wants to warn them. Tell them to stay close, stay in the light, don't wander too far. Because somewhere out there, in the dark edges of town, people like him are still watching. And maybe next time, the kid won't look up in time. I never really liked Halloween that much. Don't get me wrong, I liked the energy, the lights, the smell of pumpkin spice everywhere, but the chaos, the drunk crowds, the unpredictable people out at night, it all kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Still, in 2018, my buddy Ryan talked me into going to a Halloween party a few towns over. He'd been hyping it up for weeks, said it was supposed to be the biggest Halloween bash in the county, thrown at some old farmhouse on the edge of Maple Ridge. The plan was that we'd all go as characters from The Purge. 5 of us, me, Ryan, Derek, Liam, and Tess. We hit up a costume store a week before, picked out those creepy LED masks with the stitched smiles. Ryan picked one that glowed green. He joked that he wanted to stand out in the chaos. Funny thing is, that damn color is burned into my brain now. The night of October 30th, it was freezing out, one of those late October nights where the air bites your lungs when you breathe. We parked about a block away from the farmhouse, music thumping so loud you could feel the bass vibrating through the ground. The place looked wild, jack-o'-lanterns flickering, fake blood on the porch, fog machines pouring mist into the grass. "Man, this looks insane," Derek said, laughing as he pulled his mask down over his face. Ryan smirked through his green LED grin. "Let's purge, boys." Inside, it was chaos. Dozens of costumed faces, half of them masked, half already wasted. Someone had replaced the living room lights with red bulbs. It was like stepping into a fever dream. Everywhere you looked, people were dancing, making out, chugging from plastic cups. I stuck mostly to beer, trying to stay sober enough to drive. Ryan, though, was pounding shots like he was trying to forget something. By midnight, he could barely stand. Tess tried to keep him upright, but by the time 2 a.m. rolled around, he was gone, slurring his words, stumbling into walls, that stupid green light flashing every time he lifted his head. When it was time to head out, I helped drag Ryan to the car. He passed out before we even hit the main road. Everyone else was half asleep in the back seat, and I remember how quiet it got once I left the party behind. The country roads were pitch black. No streetlights, just my headlights cutting through the fog. For a while it was peaceful until I got to Ryan's house. He lived alone in this split-level place on the corner of a quiet cul-de-sac in Oak Hill. Nice neighborhood, big lawns, old maple trees, porch lights glowing faintly in the mist. When I pulled up, Ryan groaned and leaned forward. "Dude, I can walk," he mumbled. "You sure? You look like you can't even stand." He laughed and opened the door only to immediately fall on his ass on the driveway. "Okay, maybe I need a little help," he said, giggling like a kid. I walked him to his door, waited for him to fumble with his keys, and watched him stumble inside before I drove off. It was about 3:15 a.m. when I finally got home. At around 5 a.m., my phone started buzzing on my nightstand. I remember squinting at the screen, still half asleep. It was Ryan. I answered, groggy. "Bro, it's 5 in the morning, what the hell?" His voice came through shaky, low. "Man, I think there's someone in my house." That woke me right up. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" "I heard footsteps," he whispered. "Downstairs. Like, slow ones. I thought maybe I was just drunk, but then I heard the side door slam. My stomach dropped. He was whispering so quietly I could barely make out his words. "Ryan, lock your door. Right now." I did. I'm behind my bed. I can hear something. "Man, I swear." "Call the cops," I said firmly. "Now. On your landline. Stay on with me. Okay?" He hesitated. I could hear his breathing, shaky, terrified. Then he said, "Okay," and hung up. I sat there in bed, staring at the dark for what felt like forever. He texted me 20 minutes later, just said, "Cops came, door was open, found footprints. Nothing else." He must have forgotten to lock it after stumbling in. The next evening, Halloween night, I swung by his place. He looked rough, barely slept, still freaked out. We decided to hand out candy together, try to lighten the mood. Kids came and went, laughing, shouting, "Trick or treat." By 9 p.m., it had quieted down. The neighborhood was dimly lit, and the sound of distant fireworks echoed from somewhere beyond the trees. Ryan seemed calmer. We were just starting to pack up when there was a light tap on the living room window. He froze. We both turned. The blinds were closed, but a faint green glow leaked through the slats. "Dude," Ryan whispered. "You see that?" I stepped closer. Slowly. My heart was hammering. I lifted the blind just a little, just enough to peek. Standing outside in the dark was a man wearing the same green LED mask Ryan had worn the night before. He was holding a kitchen knife, blade glinting under the porch light, and he was just staring. Then, He tilted his head slightly and laughed. Not loud, but enough to make every hair on my body stand up. Holy shit, I backed away. Call 911. Right now. Ryan was frozen. The man started banging on the glass. Each hit harder than the last. The blinds rattled. The glass shook. "Hey, get the hell out of here!" I shouted. That only made him laugh louder. It wasn't a scream, it was this manic, unhinged laugh that sounded like it was coming from somewhere deep in his throat. Ryan finally snapped out of it and grabbed the phone. While he dialed, I heard a woman scream from outside, probably someone walking their dog who saw the guy. And just like that, he bolted. By the time the cops showed up, he was gone. They searched the yard, checked the cameras from a few nearby houses. Nothing clear, just a blur of a man in a dark hoodie with that glowing green mask. They said he'd probably been watching the house for a while. Told Ryan to keep his doors locked. Maybe stay with family for a few nights. We never found out who it was. The police said it could have been someone from the party who noticed Ryan's mask and decided to screw with him. But the thing that still bothers me, when I got back to my car that night, parked at the end of Ryan's driveway, there was something sitting on the hood, a single green LED mask, the exact same kind we bought, still glowing. I picked it up and noticed something on the inside of the mask written in black marker. 2 words, "Nice house." I looked around, but the street was empty. No footsteps, no sound. Just the flicker of that faint green light on my hands before it finally went dark. I never used to think Halloween could actually be scary. Yeah, sure, it's creepy decorations, fake blood, dollar store witches hanging from porches, but deep down, it's just a holiday for kids and lazy adults who still want to feel young. That's what I thought anyway. Until the year I learned some nights don't need ghosts or monsters to turn into horror stories. People are more than enough. Back then, I was 26, living in a small town called Ridgeview, in the kind of apartment complex that looks nicer at night because you can't see the cracks in the paint or the stains on the stairs. It was my first place alone, 1 bedroom, ground floor, thin walls, and an air conditioner that hummed like it had asthma. Rent was cheap, and that's all I cared about. I'd been working second shift at a warehouse and had just gotten that Halloween night off. It was a Friday, too perfect. I planned to do what any exhausted single guy does with a night off. Sit on the couch, eat leftover pizza, and grind through Modern Warfare 2 with a couple buddies online. Nothing fancy. All afternoon, the complex had been crawling with kids, pirates, princesses, one little dude dressed as a taco. Parents in hoodies trailed behind with flashlights, laughing and yelling, "Say thank you," every few minutes. I didn't mind it at first, but after the 5th round of knocking, my KD ratio was tanking and my patience was gone. So I did what most lazy adults do, dumped all the candy I had into a plastic bowl, scribbled a note that said, "Help yourself, Happy Halloween," and left it outside the door. Problem solved. At least, that's what I thought. About a half hour later, the knocking started again. At first, it was light, polite, rhythmic, but when I ignored it, it kept going. Harder this time. I groaned, pulled my headset off and muttered, "Come on, man," figuring some kid wanted more candy. I peeked out my front window. The bowl was still out there. Candy still inside. That was weird. The knocking didn't stop. All right, I muttered, pausing my game and grabbing a few mini Snickers from the kitchen. I figured I'd just toss them to whoever was out there and go back to gaming. When I opened the door, the first thing I noticed wasn't the costume, it was the blood. A little boy stood there, maybe 7 or 8, holding one of his sneakers in his hand, wobbling on one foot. His sock was soaked red near the toe. Beside him stood another kid, maybe a year older, eyes wide and nervous. "Sir," the older one said, voice shaking a bit. "My friend stepped on something. He's bleeding bad. Do you have a Band-Aid or something?" For a second I froze. Then instinct kicked in. Yeah, come in, quick," I said, pulling the door open wider. The kid hopped in, biting his lip hard, trying not to cry. He sat down on my dining chair while I grabbed paper towels and my old first aid kit from under the sink. The cut was small but deep, perfectly round. like a nail had gone straight through the sole of his sneaker. Blood was trickling down his heel. "Man, that's gotta hurt," I said softly, crouching down. "You're a tough little dude, huh?" He nodded, jaw trembling. "You got any parents out here with you?" "Yeah," the other kid said. "His dad's around somewhere. We can't find him, though." "Okay, listen," I said. "You go find his dad and bring him here, all right? Tell him his kid's fine, but he should probably take him to urgent care." The boy nodded fast and bolted out the door. I wrapped the injured foot in gauze and taped the best I could. "You're gonna be okay," I told the kid. "Hurts like hell now, I know. But it's not too bad." He just sniffed, trying not to cry. I grabbed a fun-sized Twix from the bowl and said, "You've earned this, little man." He smiled weakly. 5 minutes passed. Then the door shook under a thunderous bang. I jumped. Another bang followed. And another. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, nearly knocking over the chair. I ran to the door, half expecting cops or something. When I opened it, everything slowed down. A huge man stood there, shaved head, big arms, chest heaving. He looked like he'd been sprinting. His face was red, sweat dripping down his temples. The kind of guy you'd never want to piss off in a bar. "Where's my kid?" he roared. Before I could say a word, he shoved me. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall so hard a picture frame fell. "Where is he?" He screamed again, spittle flying from his mouth. "What'd you do to my boy?" Wait, he's right there," I stammered, pointing toward the living room. The kid, bless his heart, called out weakly, "Dad." The man's head whipped around. He saw his son sitting on my chair, bandaged foot propped on a towel. He froze. I stayed completely still. I didn't even breathe. The man rushed over, knelt in front of the boy. "You okay? What happened?" His voice cracked, part rage, part fear. The kid started crying then, probably from the shock of it all. "He stepped on something," I said quietly. "Came to my door for help. He turned on me so fast I flinched. "You touch my kid again, I swear to God." "Hey," I cut in, holding my hands up. "I didn't touch him except to wrap his foot. He was bleeding. I just helped." The kid sniffled, wiping his eyes. "He did, Dad. He helped." The man's shoulders fell. His face softened for the first time. He looked between me and his kid, breathing hard. After a long second, he sighed. "Shit. I'm sorry, man. I don't know what I thought." He rubbed his face, looking suddenly older. Those other kids came running up, yelling that some guy took my son inside his apartment. I just lost it. "Yeah, I get it," I said, still catching my breath. "You did what any dad would do." He nodded, then awkwardly reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled 50. "For the trouble, man. For helping him." I waved it off. "You're good. Just get him checked out." He hesitated, then pocketed the money again. "Sorry for barging in like that." "It's fine," I lied. It wasn't fine. My hands were still shaking 10 minutes after they left. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But that night wasn't done with me yet. It was close to midnight when I finally logged back onto my game. I'd set the candy bowl inside, no more trick-or-treaters, and locked the door twice. I still felt a little adrenaline buzz from that encounter, but gaming helped take my mind off it. Around 1 in the morning, I went to the kitchen for another beer. That's when I noticed it. The curtain by the window was moving. Not just a draft, it moved like someone brushed past it. Every nerve in my body went tight. I turned off the TV, letting the silence swallow the room. My ears strained. Then, a faint scratch at the door. Not knocking. Scratching. I froze. Maybe a cat, I thought. Or maybe that guy came back. My stomach twisted. "Who's there?" I called out. Silence. Then another slow scratch. "All right, not funny," I said louder. I grabbed the kitchen knife I'd used to cut pizza earlier and held it tight. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I peeked through the peephole. Nothing but the dim hallway light flickering above. Then thud. A loud smack on the door. I jumped back. The knife slipped in my hand. Another thud. This one lower. heavier like someone hit the base of the door. I grabbed my phone, ready to dial 911, when I heard a voice muffled, right outside the door. "Hey, mister." It was small, childlike. My blood ran cold. The voice came again, whispering now. "It hurts." I knew that voice. The boy. I looked through the peephole again, nothing. Just the empty porch. My brain screamed, "Don't open it." But I did anyway. The bowl of candy was there again, and that was it. Full bowl. Same note. Same everything. No kid. No blood. Nothing. I stepped out, looked both ways down the walkway. Dead quiet. Only the sound of distant crickets and the hum of a far-off streetlight. When I turned back toward my door, the note was gone. Just the bowl sitting there. I picked it up and froze. Underneath, smeared faintly across the tile, were bloody footprints. Tiny ones, leading down the hall toward the laundry room. I whispered, "No way," under my breath and backed inside, locking the door. My hands were trembling so badly the deadbolt barely clicked. The cops came after I called 2 officers. They checked the hall, laundry room, even the parking lot. Found nothing. Said the footprints could have been from earlier, maybe one of the kids tracking something. I didn't argue. I just wanted them gone so I could breathe again. After they left, I cleaned the tile with half a bottle of bleach and stayed up till sunrise. Didn't play another game. Didn't sleep either. Weeks went by. Life got back to normal. I saw that dad once or twice again at the mailboxes, mostly. We exchanged stiff nods but didn't talk much. His kids seemed fine, running around on the playground, no limp or anything. I figured the whole bloody footprint thing was just my imagination, a mix of stress and bad lighting. Then, in mid-December, a new family moved into the unit across from me, a woman in her 30s, nice enough. One night, we chatted outside while she unloaded groceries. "Hey, random question," she said, lowering her voice a little. "You been here long?" "Yeah, about a year." "Why?" She glanced toward the end of the hallway. "My kid swears he saw something weird out there last night. Said some boy was standing by the laundry room, barefoot, holding a shoe. I checked, and there was nobody." I laughed nervously. "Kids and their imaginations, huh?" "Yeah," she said, not laughing. "Thing is," he said, "the boy's foot was bleeding." I didn't say another word. Just mumbled good night, and went back inside. And every Halloween since then, I leave my porch light off. Some nights I still hear that faint scratch on the door. Just once or twice. Like a reminder, I never open it anymore. I remember that night like it was carved into my skin. Halloween, last year. I was 17, just some kid who'd rather stay home than go out pretending to be scared. I wasn't into the costumes, the fake cobwebs, the screaming plastic skeletons. I was more into pizza, video games, and keeping to myself. My plan was perfect. Modern warfare, a couple of cold sodas, and avoiding my dad's obsession with handing out candy like it was a sacred duty. But then Ryan texted, "Ryan, yo, party at Tyler's, whole school's going. Free drinks. Don't be lame." Me. "I'm good, man. Gonna chill tonight." Ryan. "Come on, bro, it's Halloween. Don't rot in your room." He kept pushing. And after 10 minutes of back and forth, I gave in. I don't even know why. Maybe I was just tired of feeling like the quiet guy no one noticed. When I told my dad I was heading out, he gave me that disappointed look, the one that said you're making a mistake without actually saying it. "Stay here," he told me, standing by the bowl of candy like a soldier guarding gold. "Help me hand these out. We'll make a night of it. I'll be back before midnight," I promised. He sighed. "You know I don't like that Ryan kid. Drives like he's running from the cops." He wasn't wrong. Ryan had more speeding tickets than birthdays, I swear. But when he pulled up, blasting old-school rap through half-broken speakers, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my jacket, waved my dad off, and got in. "Yo." Ryan grinned, ready to make some bad decisions. "Define bad," I said. He laughed. Perfect attitude. The party was a few blocks away, in one of those neighborhoods where every house looked the same trimmed lawns, Same plastic pumpkins glowing on porches. The air was cold enough to see your breath, and there were kids running around in costumes, shouting, "Trick or treat." Tyler's house was already pulsing with music. The bass hit before we even reached the door. Red cups littered the lawn, and some drunk guy in a zombie mask stumbled into the bushes while everyone laughed. As soon as we walked in, I could tell it was going to be chaos. Music blasting, lights flashing, the whole house smelling like cheap liquor and cologne. I tried to relax, get into it, but something felt off. Then I saw her, Sierra, 2 years together. 2 years of memories, lies and mistakes I wish I could scrub from my head. She caught me cheating, broke up with me, and found herself a new boyfriend within a week, a guy named Travis. The kind of dude who thought punching walls made him a man. He'd been in trouble with the cops before, more than once. Everyone knew that. And of course he was there too. Sierra noticed me first. I tried to act cool, looked away, but she walked right up to me, her smile razor sharp. "Well, look who crawled out of his cave," she said. "Didn't expect to see you here." I muttered. "Yeah, I wasn't gonna come," she said with a laugh, glancing toward Travis, who was across the room, watching us like a hawk. But he insisted, wanted to see the cheating loser in person. His words, not mine. "Real classy," I said. She smirked. "You might want to go easy on the drinks, Chris. You never know what could happen tonight." I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? But she was already walking away, hips swaying, not bothering to answer. That comment stuck in my head though, like a splinter. I tried shaking it off, joining Ryan and the guys outside near the pool. The air was cold, and someone had set up a beer pong table with glowing orange cups. I started playing, and after a few rounds, I was feeling buzzed but good. For a while, I actually forgot about Sierra and Travis, until a drink suddenly flew out of my hand, splashing all over my hoodie. I turned, ready to snap, and there he was, Travis. His face was red, his jaw tight, and his knuckles already white. "You think you can talk to my girl?" he snarled. I stared at him. "She came up to me, man. Chill the hell out." "Don't tell me to chill." "Then back off, psycho." That was it. His fist hit my face before I even finished the sentence. The crowd went wild, phones out, people cheering like it was a show. I swung back, mostly running on instinct. But he was bigger, meaner, and sober enough to know what he was doing. Ryan tried to pull us apart, but Travis shoved him hard enough that he almost fell into the pool. "Come on," I shouted, spitting blood. "You done yet?" He grinned and then pulled something from his back pocket. A knife. I swear the world stopped. It wasn't some kitchen blade, it was a hunting knife. Long and sharp enough to make your stomach turn just looking at it. The crowd gasped. Some people laughed, thinking it was fake. But I saw the metal glint under the patio light, and I knew. "Yo, man, put that down," Ryan yelled. Travis ignored him. "You think you can disrespect me in front of everyone?" I didn't. I tried to back away, but my legs felt like concrete. The whiskey, the adrenaline, it all hit at once. The world was spinning. He lunged. I dodged the first swipe, tripped over a chair, and fell hard onto the pavement. My head cracked against the concrete, stars bursting behind my eyes. Someone screamed, then pain. It hit like fire, white-hot, searing, unreal. I remember shouting, my voice raw and panicked. I don't even know how long it lasted. People scattered, some filmed, some ran inside. Nobody stopped him. The next thing I remember was the sound of sirens. I woke up in a hospital bed, fluorescent lights humming above me. My mom was crying. My dad sat in the corner, his face pale. "Hey kid," he whispered when he saw I was awake. You're okay." I wasn't okay. Not really. I looked down, my left hand was gone. Bandaged, wrapped, empty. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. Over the next few weeks I learned the rest. Travis had bolted before the cops arrived. His lawyer spun the story, said it was self-defense, that I'd attacked first. Some witness backed him up. I don't even know who. He got probation. I got a prosthetic. Halloween hasn't felt the same since. Sometimes, When I look at my reflection, the scar running down from my temple to my jaw, I can still feel the knife, still hear the laughter, still smell the booze and cheap perfume. People tell me to move on. They say it's over. But it's not. Not really. Because every Halloween night, I still see his face. I still hear Sierra's warning in my head, you never know what could happen tonight. And maybe one day, he'll find out what I've become since then. Because if there's one thing I learned that night, it's that Halloween is the perfect night for monsters, and not all of them wear masks. I was 6 years old the night it happened. Old enough to know what stranger danger meant, but still too young to really believe that anything bad could happen to me, especially on Halloween. Halloween was the holiday for me back then. Candy, costumes, spooky decorations, people out on the streets, what could be better? My parents always made a big deal out of it. My mom loved dressing my sister and me up and taking pictures before we left. That year, I was a little vampire, plastic fangs, black cape, slicked hair, the whole deal. My sister Emma was dressed as a witch, pointy hat and all. We lived in a small town in Illinois, and like most families around there, we didn't trick or treat in our own neighborhood because half the houses didn't bother turning on their porch lights. Instead, my dad drove us 10 minutes across town to Maple Grove Estates, that was the rich area, where people gave out full-size candy bars and sometimes even money. I still remember that night vividly, the cold October air, the crunch of leaves under my little black shoes, the smell of pumpkin candles burning from porches. Everything looked so alive. "Stay close, you two," my dad said as we got out of the car. Yeah, Emma said, rolling her eyes like the 9-year-old she was. "I mean it," Mom said. "There are a lot of people here tonight." And there were. The sidewalks were packed. Kids running around, parents talking, porch lights glowing orange. It felt like magic. We started going door to door, and after a few houses, I got bolder. I'd always been a chatty kid, the kind who'd talk to anyone about anything. I liked seeing all the costumes up close. If someone had a cool mask or outfit, I wanted to tell them, "Cool skeleton mask," I said to one tall guy passing by with a bucket in his hand. He looked down and nodded without saying anything. His mask was white, cracked like old bone, with dark, hollow eyes. The silence made me a little uncomfortable, but I shrugged it off. The night went on, and the crowd kept growing. Somewhere around the corner of Birch and Laramie, I got distracted by a group of older kids dressed as zombies. They were amazing fake blood, tattered clothes, makeup that made them look real. I followed them without really realizing how far ahead I'd gone. When I looked back, my parents were nowhere in sight. At first, I didn't panic. I figured I'd see them again after the next house. I kept walking, saying, "Trick or treat" at every door, proud of my growing candy stash. But then, as I stepped off another porch, I noticed a man standing under a streetlight. He had on a mask, not the cheap plastic kind. It looked real, the kind of latex mask that fit to your skin and moved when you did. It was pale, wrinkled, with deep cuts around the mouth and dark, glassy eyes. He was tall, wearing a long brown coat that brushed the tops of his boots. I stared because, well, it was the coolest costume I'd ever seen. "Hey, that's an awesome mask," I said, grinning up at him. He didn't respond. He just tilted his head a little, like he was studying me. Then, without a word, he reached out and grabbed my hand. At first, I thought maybe it was one of those adults trying to help me find my parents. But he didn't say anything, didn't look around. He just started walking fast. "Mister, my mom's that way," I said, trying to pull my hand back. He tightened his grip. It hurt. I tried to tug away again, but his fingers were strong and cold, wrapped around mine like a clamp. He just kept walking, weaving through the crowd like he knew exactly where he was going. I started yelling, "Mom! Mom!" But it was chaos, laughter, music, kids shouting. No one looked. Everyone probably thought I was just some excited kid running to catch up with his parents. He didn't stop. I could feel my heart pounding so hard it made my chest hurt. My little plastic fangs were digging into my gums. "Let go!" I yelled, kicking at his leg. He didn't even flinch. And then, through the blur of costumes and lights, I saw her, my mom. She was only about 30 feet away, standing on the sidewalk, looking around frantically. When her eyes met mine, I could see the recognition hit her like lightning. "Jason!" she screamed. "Jason!" The man stopped. For a split second, everything felt frozen. Me, him, the noise around us. Then he dropped my hand, just let go, turned, and melted into the crowd like smoke. I ran so fast I nearly fell twice, but I didn't stop until I hit my mom's legs. She grabbed me, dropping her candy bag, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "Where were you?" she shouted, her voice trembling. "What happened? Who was that man?" I couldn't even talk. I just cried. "I don't know." He grabbed me. My dad came jogging up, holding Emma's hand. "What's going on?" "Some man grabbed him," Mom said, her voice cracking. "He said some man grabbed him." Dad looked around, scanning the crowd. "What man? Where?" But the guy was gone. They wanted to go straight to the police, but I kept saying no. I was scared they'd make me talk to officers. Scared I'd somehow get in trouble for wandering off. I told them I was fine. I said I must have imagined it, that maybe someone bumped into me or something. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because the whole thing didn't feel real. We went home early that night. My mom made us hot chocolate, but I barely touched it. I just sat there, looking out the window at the streetlights flickering in the distance, wondering who that man was and what he'd wanted. Years went by. I never told my mom the truth, not until I was in my 20s. We were talking one night about weird childhood memories, and it just slipped out. She went quiet. "You never told me that," she said softly. "I know," I told her. "I guess I didn't want to scare you." Her voice shook. "Jason, I was scared. You don't remember, but that night, we went back out looking for him after you fell asleep. The police were already around the neighborhood. A couple had reported a man trying to lure their kid toward a van on Elm Drive. They never found him. That made my stomach twist. I still think about it sometimes, when Halloween rolls around, and I see little kids walking too far ahead of their parents. I feel this cold pit in my chest. Back then, I was lucky. I saw my mom in time. I screamed loud enough. But I always wonder if she hadn't been looking right then. If she'd been on a different street, what would have happened? Every year when October comes around, and the porch lights glow orange again, I think about that mask. The way it looked so real. The way he held my hand like he'd done it before. And I think about all the kids out there, running ahead, laughing, not knowing that monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes, they walk right beside you on Halloween night. I was 15 the year it happened, though it feels like a lifetime ago now. Back then, I lived way out in the country, the kind of place where the night sky actually shows stars, and the nearest neighbor's house is a good half-mile down a dirt road. My family had a small farmhouse on the edge of a patch of woods that stretched for miles. Nothing fancy, just a weathered porch, a sagging mailbox, and fields that rolled out forever. Halloween out there wasn't like what you see in movies, no neat rows of decorated houses or crowds of costumed kids running around. We'd usually walk about 3 miles just to hit maybe 10 houses, tops. But the trade-off was worth it. The people who lived out here really made up for the lack of numbers. They'd dump handfuls, no, buckets of candy into your pillowcase, sometimes even full-size bars. That particular year, the weather had been miserable all day, rain off and on since morning. By the time the sun started dipping behind the trees, the clouds finally broke, leaving everything damp, glistening, and cold. The air smelled like wet leaves and mud. There were 4 of us that night, me, Liam, Tara, Jace, and Riley. We'd all grown up on the same back roads, so we knew every shortcut, every tractor path, every old fence line. We didn't have fancy costumes either, mostly pieced-together stuff. I had some zombie makeup from the dollar store smeared on my face. Liam wore his dad's flannel with fake blood on it, and Tara had thrown on some cat ears and called it good. Jace and Riley were serial killers. which basically just meant they had fake knives and old hoodies. We'd been walking for about an hour and already had our pillowcases halfway full. Tara was the one who suggested we take the long way back through the woods, said it'd be spookier. We were all buzzed on sugar and teenage overconfidence, so of course we agreed. "Come on, it's Halloween," she said, flashing her flashlight under her chin. "We gotta at least walk through the woods once." "Yeah, and fall on our asses in the mud," Riley muttered, trying to kick mud off his sneakers. We laughed. The air had that strange quiet you only get out there, no traffic, no hum of power lines, just crickets and the occasional wind pushing through the trees. The path we took was an old tractor road that curved around the cornfields before cutting through a stretch of pine trees. The ground was soft and wet, every step leaving deep footprints behind us. It wasn't scary at first, just peaceful in that country night kind of way. But then Jace stopped. "Yo," he said, lowering his flashlight to the mud. "Check this out." We all leaned in. He was pointing at the ground at our trail of footprints stretching back the way we came, except, alongside them, a new pair had appeared, bigger ones. "Those weren't there before," Tara said. Liam frowned. "Probably just one of us doubled back a few steps earlier." No, look," Jace said, squatting down. "They come from the side, out of the woods. Then they just follow ours." We all stared for a moment, and I swear you could feel the mood shift right then, that subtle tightening in your chest when something stops feeling like a joke. Riley tried to play it off. "So what, someone else is out here? It's Halloween. Maybe a farmer or something." "Farmers don't walk around in the woods at night," Tara said quietly. "Not in this mud." No one said anything after that. We just kept walking, a little faster than before, crunching through leaves and trying not to look behind us. But after maybe 10 minutes, we reached the part of the path that looped back toward the fields, a kind of circle route that would bring us near where we started. That's when I noticed it. The footprints. They were back. But this time, the big ones didn't stop at the start of our loop. They followed us through it, meaning whoever made them was still behind us. Tara's voice trembled a little. "Guys, they weren't there before, right? Like, we would have seen them?" "No," I said. My throat felt tight. "They weren't." Liam shined his flashlight back down the path, but the beam barely cut through the darkness. The trees swayed and creaked. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then stopped. "Okay," Riley said, trying to sound tough. "Let's not freak out. Let's just walk home. No more detours." "Yeah," Tara whispered. "Let's just go." So we did. The whole way, none of us spoke. You could hear our boots squelching in the mud, the whisper of wet leaves brushing our jeans. Every once in a while, I swore I could hear something else, faint, steady, behind us, like a second rhythm of footsteps matching ours, then pausing when we did. "Did you hear that?" I finally asked. Nobody answered, but I could see by the way they were glancing around that they did. When we reached the clearing at the edge of the woods, we finally saw the first porch light flickering in the distance, the old Miller place. I felt this huge wave of relief until something moved behind us. A soft crunch. We all froze. Liam turned first, swinging his flashlight beam toward the trees. The light flickered across wet bark and mist and then landed on something. A shape, just beyond the tree line. Tall, still. The light hit what looked like a shoulder, part of an arm, and then gone. The beam flickered out. "Battery's dead," Liam muttered, smacking the flashlight. No one moved. You could feel the air go heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then came another sound, closer now. Branches creaking. A foot dragging in the mud. "Run," Tara whispered. And we did. We bolted down that path, mud splattering up our legs, candy flying from our pillowcases. I could barely breathe. My heart was hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. But through it all, I swear I could hear it, heavy footsteps pounding behind us. When we finally burst out of the woods and hit the gravel road, I didn't even look back. We sprinted until the Miller's porch light hit our faces. Mr. Miller opened the door when he heard us yelling. "What the hell are y'all doing out here?" he said, looking us over, mud-caked, panting, shaking. There's someone, I tried to say, but the words got tangled in my breath. He grabbed his shotgun from behind the door and looked past us into the dark tree line. "Ain't nobody out there," he said after a few seconds. "You kids have been scaring yourselves." We stayed there until our parents came to pick us up. Nobody ever found footprints besides ours. The sheriff even went out the next morning and said the rain had washed most of the trail clean. We told everyone the same thing, that someone had been following us in the woods, but after a few days, people stopped believing it. Just kids, spooking themselves on Halloween night, they said. Maybe that's all it was. But I'll tell you something, every time I walk that old dirt path now, years later, I still look down at the mud, and I still half expect to see those same heavy footprints trailing just behind mine. I never used to hate Halloween. In fact, it used to be one of my favorite nights of the year. The smell of carved pumpkins, the sound of laughing kids running up and down the street, the orange glow of porch lights flickering through thin fog. It was the one night the whole neighborhood felt alive. My parents' house was always the center of it all. Every year, we'd hang fake spider webs across the porch rails, plug in our animatronic ghost, and I'd sip apple cider while watching kids get scared half to death. That was before everything changed, before I learned that somewhere out there, someone else had my face. I was adopted when I was 3 months old. My parents, David and Lynn, told me the truth early on, never hiding it from me. "Your birth parents loved you," my mom would say. "They just couldn't give you what you needed." And she was right. They gave me to people who could. I grew up happy, comfortable, safe. I went to a good school, made good grades, and went off to college like any normal kid. That October, I came home for a long weekend, mostly to spend time with my parents. Halloween was coming up, and Mom had been talking all week about decorating the porch. "Come on, kiddo," she said that Friday morning, tapping my shoulder. "We gotta pick up candy before all the good stuff's gone." "Mom, you know you always buy too much," I teased, pulling on my jacket. "You're single-handedly responsible for every dentist's new car." She laughed. "Then I'll take pride in my contribution to the economy." We drove downtown, the streets lined with skeletons and orange banners advertising the fall festival. Small-town stuff, kids in costumes running ahead of their parents, a couple of teenagers smoking behind the old laundromat. We walked for maybe 40 minutes, stopping by the bakery, then the little corner store that always had the cheapest decorations. But after a while, I noticed something strange. People were staring, not just glancing, staring. 2 guys sitting outside the diner looked right at me as I passed, whispering something to each other. A woman holding her kid's hand pulled her child a little closer when she saw me. Even the cashier at the bakery froze for a second when I smiled at her. Mom?" I leaned close. "Why are people looking at me like that?" She hesitated. "They're looking at you?" "Yeah. It's weird." She shrugged a little too fast. "Probably just confusing you for someone else. Don't think too much of it." I tried to brush it off, but it gnawed at me. By the time we got home, I couldn't shake the unease sitting in my gut. Dad was in the living room watching TV when we came in. His face was pale. The news anchor's voice filled the room. The suspect is described as a white female, mid-20s, brown hair, approximately 5'7". Police say she was last seen fleeing the scene after shooting 2 victims during an attempted bank robbery in Cedar Hill. Authorities released this surveillance photo earlier today. I froze. On the screen was me. Same brown hair. Same build. Same freckle just below the left eye. But it wasn't me. I had been with my mom all week. "Dad," I whispered. "What the hell is that?" He looked at me, jaw tight. "It's not you. It can't be." But it was. Or at least, it looked exactly like me. My mom set the grocery bags down on the table. Her hands were shaking. "David, what if..." "Lynn." His voice cut through the air. "Don't. What if this is what they meant back then?" she said softly. "What if..." Before I could even ask what she was talking about, there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp bangs. Dad opened it. 2 officers stood outside. "Evening, sir," one said. "We need to speak with your daughter." They brought me in for questioning. I sat in a cold gray room under buzzing fluorescent lights, while an officer named Rodriguez stared at a file. "You're saying you were home all week?" he asked. "Yes. You can ask my mom, my dad, my professors. I don't even live in Cedar Hill." He nodded slowly. "It's weird. The resemblance is uncanny. I didn't do anything." He sighed. "We believe you. But until we clear this up, don't leave town, okay?" When they released me, my parents hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Not even close. That night I tried to sleep, but my mind was racing. Who was that woman? Why did she look exactly like me? I woke up sometime after midnight to the sound of a scream. Mom's scream. I bolted down the stairs barefoot, heart hammering. The living room lights were on, and my parents were standing frozen. Across from them stood a woman. She was me. Same face, same eyes, but her hair was greasy, her clothes torn. Her skin looked sickly pale, eyes sunken like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Why didn't you take me too?" she screamed at my parents. "You had room for her but not for me?" Mom's voice trembled. "Oh God, you're..." The woman stepped closer, shaking, tears cutting through her makeup. "They told me about you. Said you had a good life, fancy house, nice parents, college, while I got stuck with drug dealers who couldn't feed me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Listen," Dad said, hands raised, voice steady. "Whatever happened, it wasn't our fault. We didn't even know." "Shut up," she snapped, pointing a gun. "You think you can just pretend I don't exist?" My mom's voice broke. "Please, sweetheart, don't call me that." She lunged forward, and before I could process what was happening, a gunshot tore through the room. Mom fell. I screamed. Dad rushed to her, blood spreading across her leg. The woman, my twin, stumbled back, eyes wide, shaking. Then she turned and bolted out the door, disappearing into the night. The next hours were chaos. Sirens, flashing lights, questions, statements. They got her 2 hours later trying to rob a convenience store 3 blocks away. She was high, armed, and still wearing the same clothes. When the cops ran her prints, the story came out. We'd been identical twins, separated at birth. 2 families, 2 adoption agencies, some mix-up that no one caught. I went to a family with money, love, stability. She went to a house full of drugs and violence. Her name was Harper. She'd learned about me years ago and had spent months tracking me down. She'd been robbing places around town, thinking maybe she could destroy the life she thought I stole. When they showed me her mugshot, my stomach dropped. If you put the 2 of us side by side, no one could tell which one was which. She got 30 years. My mom recovered, though she still walks with a slight limp. Harper writes me letters sometimes. I don't answer, but I read them. I shouldn't, but I do. Sometimes she begs, sometimes she threatens. Most times, she just rants. You took my life. You don't deserve them. You can't hide behind their money forever. It's been years, and I still can't look in a mirror on Halloween night. Not because of ghosts or monsters or masked killers, but because I know somewhere out there, in some prison cell, there's someone who shares my face and hates me enough to want me dead. And every October, when I hear the laughter outside, see kids dressed up as something they're not, I remember how easily someone else became me. That's why I don't celebrate anymore. Because on Halloween, masks aren't always made of plastic. Some of them are born with you. I grew up in a small Minnesota town called Larkspur, the kind of place where you could leave your bike in the front yard overnight and find it untouched the next morning. Folks around here were friendly, predictable, and superstitious in their own quiet way. We still celebrated Halloween like it was something sacred. Every porch lit up with orange bulbs, every yard crowded with ghosts made of sheets, and every kid had at least one story about the old hill road or the man in the cornfield. Back then, I was 17 and still living with my parents. My mom, Teresa, worked at the local diner off County Road 9, and my dad, Rick, was a diesel mechanic. We lived in a single-story house with faded green siding, right near the edge of town, just a couple of blocks from a stretch of land everyone called Lantern Hill. It wasn't really a hill, more like a mound of earth overgrown with weeds and a line of dead cornstalks that stretched into the dark. But every Halloween, the town decorated it. Kids placed pumpkins along the dirt trail leading up the mound. And someone, no one knew who exactly, always placed a scarecrow at the top. It had been that way for decades. My dad told me he'd seen that scarecrow since he was a kid. Each year, it looked a little different, but no one admitted to being the one who set it up. Some years it had a flannel shirt and jeans, other years a trench coat or overalls. But what always stayed the same was the pumpkin head, a large, perfectly round jack-o'-lantern with deep-cut triangular eyes and a grin that looked like it had been carved with anger rather than fun. This year, though, Halloween came with a different kind of feeling. The nights had been colder, quieter. Folks said the coyotes weren't howling anymore, and the crows that used to roost near the power lines hadn't been seen in weeks. And for the first time in my life, my dad said something strange over dinner. "You ever notice the scarecrow's been facing the wrong way lately?" he asked, stirring his mashed potatoes absent-mindedly. My mom chuckled. "Wrong way?" "Yeah," he said, frowning toward the window. "Used to face the town, you know, toward Main Street, but last year I saw it facing our way, toward the houses." He laughed after saying it, but not in the way you do when something's funny. It was forced. My mom rolled her eyes and went back to talking about the diner. I remember glancing out the kitchen window that night, trying to see Lantern Hill through the line of trees, but it was too dark. A week before Halloween, I got grounded. Typical story, came home late from a bonfire, and my parents freaked out. So on Halloween night, while everyone was out trick-or-treating or partying at the community center, I sat in my room pretending to do homework. I could hear kids outside laughing, running down the sidewalks, the muffled thuds of sneakers on pavement. Every few minutes, I'd catch flashes of their costumes through the window. Princesses, pirates, vampires, all carrying plastic pumpkins full of candy. I remember glancing toward Lantern Hill just before 7. The sky was moonless, and the air had that sharp, dry smell of leaves and smoke. I could barely make out the outline of the scarecrow at the top of the hill, its shape silhouetted by the dim orange glow of the pumpkins lining the trail. Something about it made me uneasy. It looked taller than usual. Around 7:30, Mom called out from the kitchen. "Can you set the table, honey?" I sighed and closed my notebook, walking out to help her. Dad was still in the garage tinkering with his truck, the radio playing some old Springsteen song low in the background. Mom had the oven on, roasting chicken. She was talking about work again, some customer who had stiffed her on a tip, and I was barely paying attention. My eyes kept drifting toward the window. You could see the edge of the front yard from there, the small patch of grass we'd covered with fake cobwebs and a couple of animatronic spiders. And right behind that, something else. A shadow. "Mom?" I said quietly, moving closer to the window. "Did you move one of the decorations?" She frowned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What do you mean?" "There's something by the fence. It looks like a scarecrow." She laughed, but it faded when she saw my face. She came over to look. The shape was unmistakable, now tall, broad-shouldered, with what looked like a large pumpkin head sitting crookedly on top. But it wasn't facing the street like our decorations did. It was facing us. "Maybe someone's messing with us," she said uneasily. "Teenagers or something." "I don't think so," I whispered. "It wasn't there 10 minutes ago." We both stood there for a long time. Neither of us spoke. Then she shook her head and forced a laugh. "I'll have your father check it out when he comes in. Come on, grab the plates." But I couldn't stop looking. Something about the way it stood, it wasn't stiff like a decoration. The arms weren't spread. They hung loosely, like it was resting. Dad came in around 8. His face was flushed from the cold. Mom told him about the new decoration. He chuckled, but when he looked out the window, his smile froze. "That's not ours," he said flatly. "You sure?" "Positive." Ours is still in the shed from last year. I never set it up. The house went quiet. Dad went to the front door and switched on the porch light. The bulb flickered, humming weakly. The yard lit up in sickly yellow light and the scarecrow was gone. "See?" Mom said with nervous laughter. "Probably kids messing around." But Dad stepped out onto the porch anyway, flashlight in hand. I watched from the window as his beam swept across the yard. The spiders moved on their motion sensors, hissing. The flashlight moved toward the fence, the trees, the sidewalk. Nothing. Then he froze. What the hell? He crouched near the fence and picked something up. I pressed my face against the glass, trying to see. It was small, round like a pumpkin stem, snapped clean off. He brought it inside and set it on the counter. It smelled faintly of rot. "That thing wasn't fake," he said under his breath. Mom didn't answer. She just grabbed her phone and called the sheriff's office. An hour later, Deputy Larson showed up. Small-town cop, big mustache, bored expression. He took a look around the yard, shined his flashlight at the fence, found nothing but footprints in the damp grass, bare footprints. "Probably some kids playing a prank," he said. "Don't worry, Rick. I'll have a patrol car swing by a couple of times tonight." After he left, Mom double-checked every lock in the house. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shape by the fence again. The way it faced us. I woke up around 1 a.m. to a strange sound. A slow, dragging noise like something heavy being pulled across the ground. I sat up, heart pounding. The house was silent except for that sound. Drag. Pause. Drag. I crept to the window. The pumpkins lining Lantern Hill were still burning faintly in the distance. And then, halfway down the street, I saw movement. The scarecrow was walking. Not smoothly, more like jerking forward, one stiff step at a time, its head tilted, the candlelight from the jack-o'-lantern flickering inside it. It moved slowly toward our house, the axe in its hand catching the faint streetlight. I stumbled backward and ran to my parents' room. "Dad, wake up." He bolted upright. "What's wrong?" "It's out there. It's walking down the street." He cursed under his breath, grabbed the shotgun from under the bed, and ran to the living room window. When he pulled the curtain aside, there was nothing there. "I swear it was there," I said, trembling. "You probably saw a trick-or-treater heading home," Mom said weakly from the hallway. But I knew what I saw. The next morning, Dad found something by the back steps, a piece of burlap cloth, torn and crusted with mud. It smelled like earth and mold. He burned it in the fire pit out back. That night, he insisted on keeping the shotgun near the front door. Mom made him promise not to go crazy over what could have been a prank. But Halloween wasn't over yet. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, I was awake, scrolling through my phone when the house lights flickered. The digital clock blinked twice, then the power went out completely. The street outside went dark except for the dim orange glow from Lantern Hill. Then I heard the footsteps, slow, crunching on gravel, coming up the driveway. "Dad," I whispered, shaking him awake. He was already up, holding the shotgun. Mom stood behind him, clutching her phone. The sound grew louder. Step, step, step. Then something brushed against the living room window. A scraping sound, like nails on glass. Dad aimed the shotgun at the door. "If someone's out there, I'm armed," he shouted. A moment of silence. Then the porch light flickered back on, and the scarecrow was standing right there. Up close, it looked wrong. The pumpkin head wasn't carved from a real pumpkin. It looked like something older, petrified. The grin was deep and cracked, the eyes hollow but glowing faintly from within. Its clothes were rotted, dripping mud. Its hands weren't straw, they were gray, twisted, human. It tilted its head, staring through the glass. Dad fired. The window exploded outward. When the dust cleared, it was gone. The police searched for hours but found nothing except the same bare footprints, leading from our fence toward Lantern Hill and stopping halfway up the path. Mom cried herself to sleep that night. Dad sat up in the living room with the shotgun on his lap until sunrise. I couldn't sleep. At dawn, I walked to the window and looked toward Lantern Hill. The scarecrow was back in its place, standing perfectly still at the top of the mound. Only this time, the carved grin looked wider. We moved out of Larkspur 2 months later. My parents couldn't stand the nightmares, the noise, the constant feeling that something was still watching from the edge of the yard. Last week, though, I went back. I wanted to see the town again, to prove to myself that it was all in my head. Lantern Hill was still there. The pumpkins were gone, just stumps of rot in the dirt. But at the very top, I saw the scarecrow again. It wasn't facing the town. It was facing the houses. And when the wind blew, I swear I saw its hand twitch just once, as if it was waving me home.